starting to play as Batman. This video is purely for entertainment and does not infringe on copyrights or laws. The rights to the novel and image belong to the original author. We do not claim ownership. Don't like waiting and want to listen to this fanfic in full now? Subscribe to our Patreon, where you'll find the best fanfics. Chapter 276. You are safe. Desert, desolate land. Almost everyone agrees that this is the most chaotic and worst place on the Earth star. If you have to pick a place on this planet that is closest to hell, then this place will undoubtedly be the first choice. It's not just poverty. No, economic problems are not enough to make this place have such a reputation. Some historical problems in this area make this land always easy to be ignored. It is a place close to no man's land. Chaos is the norm in this place, which makes it the first choice for some shady organizations to establish bases. The Cult, the largest known illegal armed organization on the Earth star and the one that has taken almost all the blame for terrorist attacks in modern times, is hiding in this area. The members of the Cult are all native desert people and are very familiar with the terrain. They can skillfully use local bunkers and harsh climate to hide their whereabouts, plus a little bit of human protection that no one can tell whether there is any. So far, no one knows the exact location of each of their bases hidden under the yellow sand. At this time, a team of soldiers from the Cult was visiting a remote town in the desert. Several strong soldiers carried guns and bags on their shoulders, talking and laughing, and dragged a woman out of the house. She was a rare beautiful woman in such a harsh environment. Every time she went out, she had to wrap her pretty face tightly with a headscarf. Whenever she heard that a soldier was passing by the town, she would stay indoors, but it seemed to be in vain. In fact, deep down in her heart, she had long known that she might not be able to escape this fate sooner or later, because they were born in situ, this cursed desert, a corner abandoned by the gods. The capable people had long left this damn place, and the rest had no choice. They were like meat on the chopping board of fate, and the only thing they could do was to stare at the butcher's knife. The husband shouted and chased out of the house, and hugged his wife. Several soldiers were impatient, and knocked him to the ground with 3 punches and 2 kicks. The woman cried, and made a fuss, and the man rushed forward again regardless of his bruised face. The soldier who was dragging the woman seemed to have finally lost his patience, and he raised his rifle, butt and hit him on the chin. The man spat out blood, his head tilted, and he fell to the ground. When he stood up, he found that 3 front teeth had fallen out. The soldier cursed, stepped on him to the ground, and pointed his gun at his head. The crying woman was pressed to the ground. She glanced at her home from the corner of her eye, and saw only a small crack in the door. Their 6-year-old son was watching this scene through the crack, watching his father being shot. In fact, everyone saw it. People hid in their homes, watching this moment through the gaps in the door panels and curtains, but no one dared to speak, let alone come out. The empty streets were filled with only the cursing soldiers, the crying women, and the man who was about to be shot. After all, this is a place that even God has forgotten, and no one will hear even if you pray. Until today. A roar of engines descended from the sky at a very fast speed. The red and gold after image fell like a meteorite, and the landing stirred up a cyclone like a mountain and sea, and several soldiers were instantly thrown to the ground. All eyes were focused on this. The people behind the curtains, who had been numb, became active again, and stared at the miracle happening in this cursed land with wide eyes. Iron Man landed vertically, and when he stood up, the recoil cannon in his palm had already fired. The soldier who stepped on the man was hit head on, and was blown away. The man was burned into rotten meat by the high temperature recoil energy in midair. Iron Man turned around, and punched and elbowed 2 more people. One of the soldiers was hit by the elbow, and launched like a cannonball, and smashed into a bloody ball on a wall with a snap. The man took the punch and immediately rose vertically into the air, flew into the sky, and disappeared from everyone's sight. Everyone couldn't help but stare. Their place is poor, and out of touch with the news. Most people have never stepped out of the desert town for their entire lives. They have never heard of the recent changes in the big city or the world famous Iron Man. For them, smartphones are already incomprehensible high-tech products, not to mention the Iron Man armor. When they saw Iron Man, they immediately felt that it must be God's oracle, a messenger of God who saves the suffering. Some even pushed the door open and fell to the ground to worship. But these soldiers are different from the people. They know clearly what they are facing. The last soldier saw his teammate being knocked down, turned around and ran away, holding the walkie-talkie and screaming, "It's Iron Man. Does anyone hear? Iron Man is coming." Before he finished speaking, the recoil energy cannon had caught up. The energy beam passed through his heart, leaving a huge charred hole, and the soldier fell to the ground. Correction, it's not Iron Man who is coming. Iron Man walked to the side of the walkie-talkie that fell to the ground and stepped on it to pieces. Point, it's your doom. The soldiers obviously didn't know that the situation at the base they had just called was even worse than this. A minute ago, the robot Iron Man Corps had already arrived. A long line of Iron Man formations descended from the sky, and the continuous queue was like a line of fire that divided the blue sky. The soldiers on duty were playing cards and the radar didn't respond at all, so they didn't realize they were attacked until the energy cannons were everywhere and the whole base was burning. The burning buildings were smashed to pieces on the ground, and balls of flames exploded. Tanks were easily blasted through by recoil cannons like butter, and various military facilities exploded one after another. Countless militants were burned to ashes before they even reacted to what happened. The robot Iron Man was divided into several teams. One team was responsible for bombing air defense targets, and one was responsible for clearing ground personnel. In addition, of course, there was a special team responsible for hostage rescue. The internal structure of the armed base was also explored clearly before the operation, so each Iron Man team was precisely set to carry out specific strategic goals. Therefore, the camp command system was completely destroyed the moment the first round of attacks landed, and at the same time, a team had already rushed to the hostage-taking location. The metal fence used for blockade was deformed by an external force. A woman's scream came from the darkness, and the half-naked hostages shrank desperately into the corner of the room. Ice blue eyes and a sun-like core on the chest lit up from the door, and a steel machine with the letter A printed on the chest appeared at the door, and the AI's gentle and kind voice came from the speaker. "Don't worry, ladies, we are Steel Rescue Team 001. You are safe now." Chapter 277. They heard everyone. More than 40 heavy tanks, mobile anti-aircraft guns and armed helicopters. Thousands of enemies. The general stood in front of the table in the conference room, and the large screen behind him projected the exact location of the order facility that had just been exposed yesterday in the desert. Of course, it has now become a ruin. Several major rebels have been killed, and the worst one had an entire surveillance tower fall on him. When he was dug out of the ruins, his identity could only be identified by DNA. Of course, the resistance organizations are a mob, and their soldiers' military literacy and combat capabilities are not comparable to those of the regular army. But what I want to say is that even so, they are a force that cannot be ignored. They have regular equipment, hidden camps, and more importantly, rich experience in living and fighting in the desert, which is an advantage that even our best teams cannot match. Because of this, they have been dodging and evading the garrisons in the desert for many years, and we have never been able to really give them a fatal blow. But now they are finished. 4 bases, huge facilities, as if they were wiped off the map. And the whole process took only 24 seconds. Some people in the conference room had heard the news, but some people just learned about it. Those senior officials who heard the news just now opened their mouths wide and looked at the data displayed on his screen with suspicion. 24 seconds? Even if the fastest gun boy has not taken off his pants in this time, right? Could it be that a typhoon suddenly came and blew the whole base into the sky? Who did it? Someone in the conference room asked, although they had vaguely guessed the answer when they asked the question. Tony Stark, Iron Man as we all know him. No one spoke for a while. The person in this room represented the person with the highest say in Polster. Knowing that the planet might be facing a major threat, they were grateful for having such a powerful ally, but at the same time they were a little uneasy. That was an inevitable problem for people who were used to holding power, and things that could not be controlled would always touch their sensitive areas. Yes, they all knew that Iron Man had the ability to overthrow an army single-handedly, but when such data and reality were placed in front of them, the huge gap between the two sides would still be frightening. Today the target is a legal armed element. What if one day the target becomes them? I thought this was something we had already considered. Zidane, the old man sitting at the table, said, they are visitors from another world, with technology that is countless generations ahead of ours, alien technology, and those almost invincible superpowers. We have known this for a long time, right? They have the power to easily sweep across this planet, and now it is nothing more than showing it to us in the most intuitive way. Everyone was silent, but they all knew that it was true. They had known how strong these lies were, but hearing about them was never as shocking as seeing it with their own eyes. The facts they saw at this time scared them a little. There is one more thing, gentlemen, the general said. This operation was coordinated by the military. Iron Man contacted us in advance and asked us to prepare for deployment in advance. We followed his instructions to control the situation and protect the people in the shortest time, and we were able to enter the scene as soon as possible after they took action. But in fact, everyone here should understand that this is not really necessary for Iron Man. He can handle any situation alone. I agree, and this is exactly what I wanted to say just now. Chaping Dang, who was sitting opposite the table, spoke. They have given us enough respect and are willing to cooperate with us. Our relationship is working well now, and we need to maintain it at all costs, rather than being smart and adding some rules and regulations that they have no reason to follow. This may be the greatest opportunity in human history, an opportunity to make everyone's life better and greatly accelerate the entire civilization. And what they are doing is to solve the stubborn problems that we have had ideas for a long time but no one can really deal with. So what I want to say is, just at this point, he was suddenly interrupted. A voice sounded from his side. Good evening, gentlemen. Everyone in the room almost missed a heartbeat. Countless shocked eyes gathered over and saw Tony Stark, dressed in a suit, sitting in the room with his legs crossed, as if he was a participant in this meeting. I know some of you may be my fans, but don't get too excited and don't ask for autographs. After all, I'm not really here. Tony smiled. What do you mean you're not real? Oh. Everyone was confused at first, but soon realized it was not the real Stark who appeared here, but just a holographic image. Iron Man, who is busy with all kinds of things, has no time to come to their small meeting in person. But people who found this were even more surprised. You have to know that this may be the safest room in the world. The room itself is isolated from signals in any form, and even the senior executives in the meeting cannot receive or send any messages. From the perspective of human technology, it is completely impossible to send messages in. Even the experts who were responsible for the communication security of this room at the beginning patted their chests and guaranteed that eavesdropping on such a place almost violated the basic principles of communication and was absolutely impossible. But the other party not only sent it in, but also seemed to be able to broadcast it live. This made someone realize a new problem. Wait, Mr. Stark. In other words, you also installed a holographic projection device in our conference room? Yes, I'm sorry that I seem to have forgotten to tell you in advance, because I found that you seem to like to hold meetings here, so in order to facilitate participation and save time, I asked someone to install a set. Next time, I must remember to notify you in advance. Everyone. The senior executives looked weird at each other, and they didn't know what to say for a while. I noticed that you seem to like to hold meetings here. The purpose of our meeting here is so that no one can hear us. Damn it. In the end, they went to great lengths to prepare such a safe house, thinking that they can talk freely without worrying about the walls having ears. But in fact, every episode there is a live broadcast. Question mark? Actually, when it was first built, although it was set up according to the highest security standards, it is easy to be ruined if people come in and out too many times. After accepting the setting of Batman's elusiveness, most people actually did not have any great expectations for the actual security of this conference room. Everyone just thought that at least it could stop ordinary spies and assassins. As for guys like Batman who want to come in, that person will always come in. There is nothing we can do. As the saying goes, life is like an infomaniac. If you can't resist, you have to learn to accept it. In this regard, they have already accepted reality and given up resistance. But being in and out is one thing, and being in and out is one thing, and being in and leaving something inside is a completely different nature. Now, from what Stark said, not only did his men come in casually, like they came into the back garden, but they also installed a set of projection equipment right under their noses. No one noticed even after the construction was underway. Are all the security department blind? What's the difference between this and the annoying plot where the yellow-haired guy was having fun in the bedroom and the victim was deaf through the door? This made them feel like monkeys being fooled in the zoo, but they were embarrassed and secretly felt lucky. Fortunately, they didn't really make any small calculations behind the scenes during the meeting. At most, they just expressed a little uneasiness about the power of those superheroes and didn't really discuss what measures to take. Otherwise, if they annoyed the other party because of a few words, it would be a real loss. As you already know, we are taking action against the organization called the Order. They are not finished yet, but they will be soon. My people have locked the location of the leader and will carry out the decapitation operation tomorrow. Stark said, my assistant will send you the detailed time and location. The general understood. Understood. We will deploy in advance as you requested and ensure that no civilians are affected. Thank you again for everything you and your alliance have done for this planet. After explaining the matter, Stark's figure disappeared from the room. No one said anything, but everyone's expression was clearly slightly different from before. Tony Stark suddenly appeared without any signs, and it took only more than 10 or 20 seconds, which might even be shorter than his Iron Legion took over 4 military bases. But in such a short moment, the few words he said had already silenced the whole audience. Someone quickly realized that the other party might not just suddenly remember something and come to notify. According to their previous cooperation model, such notifications were generally notified online by Stark's mysterious assistant. He rarely took the time to show up in person in his busy schedule, even if it was just a remote projection. So perhaps this short appearance of just 10 seconds was a silent warning, a hint to all of them. So, someone said after a brief silence, does that mean that everyone here knows everything we say? The old man said and glanced at the speaker. Oh, don't be silly, he said. They know everything everyone says. Chapter 278 Super Scientist. The old man was actually exaggerating. Chu Cheng now does have the ability to hack into the mission network and view any data information. Basically, any information connected to the network is open and transparent to him. But it is not possible to see every place on the Earth pole star. Not yet. The drone monitoring network is still in its infancy, and the only city that has achieved full coverage is Vendelany. And the second target he chose on the monitoring network is not any big city, but the desert known as the No Man's Land. Multiple terrorist organizations and a large number of military bases are undoubtedly the fastest places to gain experience among fixed points on this planet. And based on previous operational experience, he also found that rescuing civilians will be regarded as an additional achievement by the system, and there will be experience bonuses and rewards such as single draw tickets. As long as the drone finds the target and marks it, the Iron Legion can sweep the camp in an instant, which is simple, fast and efficient. The establishment of the drone network has improved Chu Cheng's game efficiency by many times compared to the past. Now he no longer needs to drive a hero to patrol the streets like in the early days and see if he can refresh the task randomly based on his luck. Most of the randomly triggered tasks will be automatically marked, and the heroes in the nearby idle state will automatically go to handle them. Tasks that the AI cannot handle will be classified, so Chu Cheng only needs to keep changing his vests and logging in between heroes in different places to continuously earn points by doing high quality tasks. He does not need to patrol the streets and is not limited to one city. This is why his daily schedule is so full now. His perspective switches back and forth between multiple heroes in different cities, and sometimes he has to travel online to several cities in one day. Oh, and he can't forget the scientific research plan. He always has to check the technology list. Although there are people who are responsible for the actual development, he needs to make overall plans, customize the equipment and the interface, arrange the right people to carry out the development work, arrange the development of the completed equipment into mass production, etc. It is not an exaggeration to say that he is busy with all kinds of things now. But of course, the rate of return is also visible to the naked eye. His efficiency in killing monsters and earning points in various parts of the world has increased significantly. Otherwise, with the point requirement of 10 times that of the A-level mixed pool, he would have to save up points in the past to draw a round. And now he has put together another set of 10 consecutive draws. Points are magical. They feel like wallets. They never feel warm in your hands. It feels like a girlfriend with cat ears and plugins. If she doesn't have them, it's fine. But if she does, you can't stop thinking about her. But there is a saying that men should act when they should. Although it's embarrassing when eating dirt, they should not be weak when they should be handsome. Just go straight to 10 consecutive. Batman's grappling gun, the grenade launcher used by the Winter Soldier in Captain America 2. At the beginning, there are several relatively ordinary equipment. It can't be said that they have no practical value, but it can only be said that they are too useless for Chu Cheng now. Now that the technical module is unlocked, he can make most weapons and equipment. The grappling gun grenade launcher is already child's play. It would be a very powerful equipment in the early stage of delivery, but it is outdated now. 74 then a SEAL level hero was shipped. Although the level is not high, the status is not low. It is still a famous veteran, Black Widow, the most famous generation, that is, Natasha Romanoff. The Black Widow of MCU was adapted into the Avengers. When the big veterans gathered, a bunch of gods stood in the camera, and they all knew the fact that there are only two of us who don't have a personal movie, but we don't say it. But as a duo who are also lazy, the poor Hawkeye was forgotten by passers-by in his personal drama 10 years later, but Black Widow successfully made the audience remember her name in the team of gods with a pair of superpowers that can gather people's hearts. Needless to say, in the comics of 8, when Black Widow was mentioned, the first thing the audience thought of was shared girlfriend, rather than the Avengers. So unless Chu Cheng needs to wear women's clothes online to show off his beauty, the Black Widow, who has just been shipped, is estimated to be mainly used to be assigned a small city to station in addition to being stored in the warehouse. But the heroes shipped next are heavyweights. The real Avengers veteran, the super genius who ranks among the top in Marvel IQ, Hank Pym, is also known as the first generation Ant-Man. Chu Cheng's eyes lit up instantly, and he was immediately excited. I won the prize. The system evaluation is A-level. But Ant-Man is usually a logistics player, rather than a starter in the Avengers. He doesn't like fighting, and is a pacifist who doesn't like fighting. So although he has an A-level evaluation, his actual combat ability may not be top-notch, but this hero's shipping value may be higher than many other stronger A-level heroes. The reason is simple, because he is one of the most famous scientists on Marvel's Earth. After Chu Cheng shipped, the first thing he thought of was not to log in and select a hero to check, but to immediately click on the technology module and scroll down. Sure enough, he found the module under the name of Ant-Man that had just been unlocked. It's a lot more than the original existing technology. The reason why Ant-Man is called Ant-Man is because of his superpowers that all men dream of flexing freely and being long or short, and when it is big, it can even be big enough to pierce the sky. And in the movie, the second generation Ant-Man Scott was actually just a novice when he debuted, showing only the tip of the iceberg of this ability. The first generation of Ant-Man Hank Pym has almost merged with the Pym particles in the later period. He can control the Pym particles with his own thoughts, which has truly become a part of his superpowers without relying on technological equipment. At that time, he can even multiply parts of his body. But this is not his most buggy part. The most buggy part of him is that he is the top scientist in Marvel. As for the scientists in American comics, it is hard to say about others, but Ant-Man is definitely a model of being able to save a lot of trouble by shooting him. His most representative scientific research contribution is the Pym particles, which is also the reason why he can change his body shape freely. How abnormal this particle is has been fully reflected in the Avengers movie. Even the time travel of the Avengers in the final battle is the result of the application of this particle. And even that is just the tip of the iceberg. This particle has a huge role in countless fields that even Marvel scientists can hardly imagine. In reality, a scientist who has made top achievements in a field is already a big shot in history, but Marvel is different. Based on the principle that scientists love to cross boundaries, Hank Pym, as a pillar of superpowers, has taken big steps across fields. It is clear that his contribution in the first half of his life was in the field of biochemistry, and there is a hint of quantum field. As a result, just when you thought he would be a tool for Marvel screenwriters to come out when they were in a dilemma about quantum physics, he unexpectedly created the most powerful artificial intelligence in history, tormenting Marvel superheroes for decades and even running to the universe to occupy countless planets. The world-destroying robot, Ultron. Although Hank's biggest black pot in life was taken away by Stark, who was named by the director as the scapegoat in the movie, the game system did not seem to take away his honor, because after unlocking Iron Man before, Chu Cheng did not find the corresponding artificial intelligence technology in the technology module, but now he saw it. When Chu Cheng flipped down the list and saw the big words Ultron in the artificial intelligence and robotics technology module, he froze. Although it feels like, once this thing is built, it may not take long for it to evolve and develop into Chu Cheng's strongest fighting force at present, and any ancient god or foreign god can be defeated. But for some reason, a strong desire to survive seems to tell him not to press this tempting button at this stage. Chapter 279. Who is the criminal? Jiangdu. Somewhere, Jack stumbled into the convenience store. Aunt Lee, who was watching the store, was sitting behind the counter, wearing a pair of reading glasses, and looking at her phone. She noticed that Jack raised his eyelids when he came in. "I guess the wine is gone again," Aunt Lee said casually. Jack hummed vaguely, ignored him, and went straight to the back shelf to look for wine. He was obviously very familiar with the display of goods in the store, and went straight to the area where the wine was placed. His face was ruddy, his lower body was weak, and he wanted to stagger with every step. Obviously, he was not very sober. When he reached the corner, he tripped and almost fell down. "Be careful not to knock things over," Aunt Lee muttered. Jack responded with something, and a moment later he returned to the counter with a bag of wine. He squinted at the video playing on Aunt Lee's phone. Stark Smart Bracelet is a product that can completely replace modern smartphones. It is light and portable, can be used for 3-dimensional screen projection, and is equipped with an iris projection system and an augmented reality module. The screen can be projected into any area of your field of vision anytime and anywhere. Jack frowned and stared at the small screen for a moment. "Do you believe those words? Customizing the future or something?" "What?" "Oh," Aunt Lee said, "I don't understand those technological gadgets. But the gadgets they develop look good. This bracelet does look more convenient than a mobile phone, and it is unexpectedly cheap. Our kid has reserved one for each of us." But it sounds good, packaging yourself as a savior, no different from those high-handed guys in the past. Jack snorted. "No one has ever cared about the people at the bottom, who really need help." Aunt Lee was not surprised by his words. Failed the interview again. Jack did not answer, and was about to walk out with the wine. "Just put it on my account. I'll settle it before next month." Aunt Lee didn't say anything. She just took out the account book from under the counter, made a note, closed it and continued to watch her video. Jack staggered into the night, his steps still unsteady, and the wine bottle in his bag banged against each other from time to time. Before he got home, he couldn't wait to take out a bottle, opened the bottle cap, raised the bottle upside down, and started to pour it into his mouth. The alcohol made him feel warm, and even his terrible mood seemed to be paralyzed a little. He looked to the side with a hazy look, and suddenly felt as if someone was looking back from the darkness. Jack was stunned for a moment, and poured another sip of wine into his mouth. He squinted his drunken eyes, and saw two dangerous dark red lights in the darkness, like a pair of will-o'-the-wisp. Then, the will-o'-the-wisp rushed towards him. Jack was sobered up in an instant. The black shadow was accompanied by a violent sound of wind, and the huge shadow seemed to cover the sky. Ugh. Aunt Lee could hardly believe what she saw. When she followed the sound, she only saw a bloody blur in the darkness. Before she could see clearly, she felt something touching her shoes. She subconsciously looked down, and felt her blood pressure surge. Her eyes went dark, and she almost fell down. It was Jack's head. It had been separated from the body, but his eyes were still wide open, and the muscles on his face were frozen in fear. Aunt Lee didn't remember how she got back to the store, nor did she remember the process of dialing the number. She only remembered that the busy tone on the phone had never been as long as today, and she once thought that she would never be able to wait for the call to be connected in this life. Hello, this is the police station. Report a case. I want to report a case. Right in front of my store, someone is dead and the body is everywhere. His head. Calm down, ma'am. Tell me your address. Hearing the voice of others made her calm down a little, and she gave her address. Okay, ma'am. We have dispatched the nearby security vehicles to your place. It will take at most 5 minutes to arrive. Do you see the suspect? Aunt Lee replayed the scene in her mind, thinking of the way the thing turned back, and the ghost-like eyes. Her hands and feet suddenly became cold again, and she shivered again. Ma'am? Are you still there? The operator's voice pulled her back to reality. Yes, I saw it. The criminal is him. She held her breath and lowered her voice, as if she was afraid of being heard. Point Batman. On Friday, list all the technologies that can be conditionally replicated in Dr. Pyme's module, and remind me to sort them out when you have time. Okay, sir. Chu Cheng exited the technology module. There are too many new technologies that have emerged with the addition of Ant-Man. It takes a long time to read the detailed descriptions one by one. Unfortunately, he doesn't have much time now. At this moment, he is upgrading the system of the drone and the equipment customization module. The production of the first 2 batches of drones has been completed, and the 3rd batch is also close to completion. The goal is to achieve full coverage of Jiangdu. But before this batch is put into use, he plans to edit in new features. The infected person identification technology developed by Miyazaki Leozui has been successfully downloaded into the detective mode function of Batman's helmet. Now, he wants to install this technology in drones. Through drones automatically scanning and identifying the infection reactions of everyone on the streets, no infected person can hide in front of their omnipresent eyes. Even asymptomatic carriers without obvious abnormal performance can be scanned and discovered in advance, so that they can be blocked and controlled before the infection spreads. In this way, his drone network will have the ability to detect infected people and sources of infection with extremely high efficiency. After all, whether it is militants or criminal tyrants, these experiences are easy to earn, but the rewards are not as rich as supernatural tasks. Various infection events are the biggest part of experience points. After testing the surveillance performance of this network on the criminal system of Inderani and terrorists in the desert, the next step is to prevent and control infection events. In this way, he can control various infection events as quickly as possible, cut off the infection transmission chain from the source, control the harm to the maximum extent, and even have the opportunity to solve such problems once and for all. If the ancient gods from outer space really come in the near future, then this defense system will be even more important. Chu Cheng had played the kind of game that allows you to edit weapons and equipment by yourself before. This kind of game is often relatively difficult to get started with at first, and it may seem a bit boring to get started. But once you understand it and get fully involved, the pleasure of creation is irresistible, and it is always easy to immerse yourself in it and forget the time. Just like now. Sir, Iron Man will arrive at the battlefield in 1 minute. Friday said. Huh? So fast? Chu Cheng glanced at the time. Have I been here for so long? Yes, sir. You edited the auto navigation hang-up function for Iron Man, and the target of tracking is Hassenstein, the leader of the cult. The target secretly fled the headquarters on a private plane. Of course, it is actually under the monitoring of our drone network. Iron Man has 40 seconds to reach the target. Don't rush. I'm already logging in. Chu Cheng clicked save work progress and temporarily exited the equipment editing, entered the hero selection interface, and selected Iron Man at the speed of light. The loading icon flashed, and the screen lit up after a moment. 10 seconds left. Friday said. No need to report. I've seen it. The screen lit up, and Chu Cheng had entered Iron Man's perspective. When the screen lit up, the red and gold Mark 43 suit was pushing forward at full speed, with gorgeous tail flames spitting out from his hands, feet and back. Iron Man pushed forward at full speed, and the white passenger plane that was running away with its head in its hands appeared in the field of vision ahead. Very good. Let's go up and say hello to the leader of the cult. Chapter 280, The First Detective. Above the sea, 9,000 meters above the ground. We shouldn't have run away. The leader of the cult, Hassenstein, looked out the window at the endless blue sky and said in a low voice, "Our foundation, everything we have built so far, we have developed into the strongest resistance force in the world. But what will be left if we leave? At least you saved your life, Hassenstein." The speaker was his closest friend, Tak Khan. The base can be rebuilt if it is destroyed, and the soldiers can be retrained if they die. But if you fall, the cult will really end. Hassenstein pondered for a moment. How did those lunatics know where we are? Every one of our bases, all our facilities, even those hidden underground, and places where communications are completely blocked, there is a traitor among us. This is the only explanation. Tak Khan said, "But don't worry, the only ones who know the route of this flight are you and me, the few people on this flight, and the 2 escort fighters next to it. They are all absolutely trustworthy people. Even everyone in the organization thought that you were living and dying with the headquarters. So it is absolutely impossible for anyone to find out this time." Boom. Before he finished speaking, a deafening explosion sounded. Before anyone could notice, a fighter jet escorting nearby turned into a ball of fire, and the metal wreckage fell down with a trail of flames. The breathing of everyone on the plane stopped. At the last moment of his life, Hassenstein looked out of the window from the plane. Under the blue sky, the flying evil spirit flew out of the fireball and flew outside the window of their special plane at an almost relatively static speed, with the golden steel mask looking coldly in their direction. On the other side, while Chu Cheng was operating Iron Man to shoot down the first fighter, Friday had already reminded him, "Sir? What? Busy Friday. I know, but I think you don't want to miss it. There is a bat light outside our window right now, outside the 13th Street. Friday said. "Looking for Batman? This hasn't happened for a while. Jiangdu is now almost a model city on the Earth Star, and crime has long become a thing of the past. Especially after Batman became famous, even criminals from other places would choose to keep a low profile when they came to the local area, so it has been a while since the last time the bat light was needed. I have used the camera and the police department's reporting system to see the situation on the scene. The leader is Captain Liu Crossing of the police department." Friday said, "I can inform him that Batman is temporarily unavailable." "No, it's okay. Batman is on the way." While speaking, the second escort fighter was shot down. Iron Man flew to the side of the passenger plane, and the laser weapon on the back of his hand was activated. The beam was released, and the red-hot light cut like a sword that split the blue sky. A circle of red cuts suddenly appeared on the fuselage of the entire plane, and the cabin was divided into 2. The air pressure inside and outside was unbalanced. Countless documents, computers and mobile phones, and screaming human bodies were all sucked into the air from the divided cabin at an altitude of 9,000 meters in an instant. Iron Man stretched out his arm and grabbed Hassenstein, the man who led the cult and committed countless crimes, from among the terrorists in the air. Facial recognition completed. Target confirmed. Hassenstein, the mission target is correct. The man who placed countless faiths on himself swallowed his saliva, felt the scorching cyclone at an altitude of 9,000 meters, and looked at the red and gold armor in front of him. He felt that he had never been so small in his life. "So it seems that I was wrong," Hassenstein said softly. "So God has sent down his judgment." "No, you are wrong. This has nothing to do with God." Iron Man loosened his hand and watched the man being drawn into the fiery cyclone, falling like a leaf under the pull of gravity. "Point, I'm your judgment. Set automatic navigation, hang up and log off. Reselect heroes, read the map and load." The game screen changed instantly. After a short moment, Chu Cheng had returned to Jiangdu from the other side of the Earth Pole Star as Batman. However, when Batman appeared at the scene of the crime this time, a few sheriffs looked at him with a touch of strangeness that they did not usually have, but they did not say much. Captain Liu of the Public Security Bureau greeted him and briefly described the case. After roughly explaining what happened, Captain Liu looked at him helplessly and added, "Batman, we all know that it wasn't you. We all know it. If there is anyone who can best see how much change you have brought to this city, the Jiangdu Security Bureau must be at the forefront." but the older sister who witnessed the incident was terrified, so I suggest that you better not appear in front of her. We can show you her confession and testimony. If there is anything else you want to know, just ask. I can arrange for someone to ask. Of course, it's just a suggestion. If you think it's necessary, no need. Batman interrupted. To be honest, Chu Cheng was also slightly moved by their trust in the master. There is a saying that there is no harm without comparison. For example, Jameson, the boss of New York City's top black newspaper next door to Spider-Man, likes to put the blame on Zio-chan for no reason. If there is an accusation that Spider-Man murdered someone in the street, Zio-chan will definitely jump into the Yellow River to clear his name. And now the built-in lie detector in the helmet shows that what the sheriff said is true. Even if the only eyewitness is sure, they seem to have almost never thought that the murderer is really Batman. Zio-chan cried with envy after hearing this, and asked directly, do such teammates really exist? But the master in this game never needs testimony to solve cases. The detective mode is turned on, and the crime scene playback scan is directly activated. Batman came to the side of the miserable corpse, and activated the scan. A security guard not far behind was looking at the stopped Batman with some curiosity. What is he doing? Shh, keep your voice down, don't disturb. His partner said. He has his own way of reasoning and handling cases. Do you know what we call him? Batman. The Dark Knight. That's a more well-known title. In our system, we call him Detective. Seriously? Of course, if you have worked with him on even one case, you will know that he is simply amazing, just as outrageous as Sherlock Holmes in the novel. His reasoning is as if he had personally seen the crime scene. Mr. Security Guard was actually being conservative. If Chu Cheng knew, he might have reminded him to be more confident and remove the word as if. What they said was indeed correct. DC Comics is the abbreviation of Detective Comics. Batman was originally just a derivative character that first appeared in the 27th issue of Detective Comics. Later, as its popularity increased, IP derivatives gradually replaced it and became the only protagonist of Detective Comics. Detective Comics also gradually became his personal main publication, and then slowly formed the background of Batman's character as the world's strongest detective. A famous detective once said that the more serious the crime, the more clues it will leave, and the more casual theft, the harder it is to catch. This principle is also applicable to Batman's detective mode. For example, the messy scene at the moment, the tragic corpses scattered here and there, the extremely miserable death, and the fact that the criminal did not seem to deliberately destroy the evidence made it not difficult to model and replay the scene. Soon Chu Cheng used Batman's perspective to watch the drunk Jack being attacked when he came out of the convenience store, but he still didn't fully understand what the attacker was. From the reconstruction model of the crime, he could see that the model of the criminal was a huge guy with a huge and twisted body and a pair of wide wings. The shape really looked like an enlarged bat. If you suddenly ran into him in the dark, it would be easy to mistake him for Batman. And the last part of the replay showed that the thing spread its wings and flew away after committing the crime. Flying away in the air might have made tracking a little difficult, but it didn't stump the DC's top detective. An analysis loading icon popped up on the detective mode. After the progress bar turned to 100%, the system immediately gave the master a series of inner monologues as a prompt. The attacker released a weak magnetic signature signal when flying. I adjusted the eyepiece in the helmet so that I should be able to track the corresponding magnetic signature and see where the criminal flew to. After saying that, Chu Cheng turned on the detective mode again and saw a blurry arc appearing in Batman's perspective, extending from the crime scene to the air, and it was blurry and unclear what was farther away. But by operating Batman to take a few steps forward, the range of the detective mode extended slightly forward, and the arc also extended forward. The master is awesome. How about it, Batman? Captain Liu asked. I have to chase a clue. Batman raised his hand and shot out his grappling claw with a snap. Thank you for the hard work, Captain, but I will take over from here. I'll let you know if there is a need next. Under the contraction of the fibers, Batman suddenly accelerated into the sky. His cloak spread out in midair, the thrusters ignited, and he disappeared into the night following the marked arc. Chapter 281 New Threat. Tracking is not difficult. Basically, it is just following a brightly colored route marked in the air by the detective mode. There are similar levels in the Batman and Spider-Man games. Not only is there a route indicator in the field of vision, but there is also a corresponding characteristic magnetic intensity detector in the corner of the detective mode field of vision. When Batman flies in the direction of approaching, the intensity index will increase, and vice versa. So from the perspective of the detective world, the detective mode of the Master also belongs to times have changed. Just as the popularization of technologies such as fingerprint DNA verification made the investigation and handling of cases in the new era countless times simpler than before, Batman's equipment also made the investigation and handling of cases for him instantly reduced from the modern hell difficulty to the simple difficulty. After flying about 3 or 4 miles in the direction of the track, the population gradually became sparse. The place where the crime occurred was a bit remote in Jiangdu, and it was a residential area for residents with poor economic conditions. Flying a distance further out, even the lights were not visible. The lights of the city were gradually left behind, and Batman flew into the sky above a lush forest. In fact, the flying speed of the suit can be supersonic, but because the built-in computer of the helmet needs time to scan and analyze the route, it is easy to lose track if the speed is too fast. So Chu Cheng also needs to control the speed and not fly too fast. It was here that they encountered the unknown enemy. Without any signs, when the counterattack logo appeared on the screen, the enemy had almost landed on Batman. There was no sound at all, and the black shadow flew from behind, like a predatory falcon, swooping down on Batman's back from a high altitude. When Chu Cheng pressed the counterattack button, the thing had already caught Batman. Batman hit the thing's chest with his right elbow, but it was as ineffective as hitting steel. The black and sharp claws grabbed Batman's left waist. The ultra-thin alloy armor of the suit blocked the claws, but an amazing strange force still almost penetrated the nanonet. The camera screen shook, and special effects similar to bleeding appeared around the screen, which was a reminder of the hero's injury. However, the thing found that it could not penetrate the armor, but it was unwilling to give up the advantageous position behind it. In any system of combat, grabbing someone's back is an absolute advantage, especially in ground submission battles. It is the key to victory, and is the most fundamental boxing theory. Although the beast monster does not understand the theory of combat, it can always summarize some experience and principles from years of hunting, many of which coincide with the basics of combat. The thing seemed to grab Batman's body with something like hands and wings, and its claws still tried to attack the armor without giving up. Chu Cheng pressed the counterattack button frantically according to the QTE prompt. Batman elbowed the thing 3 times with a force that was enough to smash a human head into paste, and the opponent's strength finally loosened a little. Then he pressed the sprint button according to the QTE prompt, and saw that Batman's back thruster suddenly increased in power, and he deliberately aimed the jet nozzle at the enemy behind him. The propulsion tail flame burst out like a flamethrower, hitting and burning the chest of the thing. The thing screamed all over, and finally let go of Batman and left. After the thing was released, its wings flapped and it rose in height. Batman flew to the middle of the air and suddenly retracted his wings into a cape, folded his thrusters, fell in free fall for a while, and then suddenly opened his cape with a whoosh and reignited and took off. After this operation, he suddenly changed from being the pursued in front to the pursuer, and took advantage of the power of the thrusters to fly over the attacker. While gaining an absolute advantage in the air battle, he finally saw the attacker's appearance from a high position. As the witness said, it really looked like a bat, but its size was enlarged countless times that of a normal bat. Batman is already a very sturdy adult male, but he still looks a little short in front of it. This made Chu Cheng think of the classic villain Batman in Gotham, a scientist who mutated after fusing bat genes. The creature in front of him is somewhat similar in comparison, but a closer look will reveal that it is still different. Although the Batman is also a giant bat, it still has a human component. It looks like a human with many bat features. But the one in front of him looks like an enlarged bat, with powerful strength and sharp claws. Under the night, it looks a bit like the legendary vampire. I don't know if the bat monster was a little angry when he saw such a confused human cosplaying himself. He turned his head and screamed in the direction of Batman, flapping his wings as if he wanted to attack. But he was caught just now because he was caught by surprise. If it was a head-on-air battle, he would be completely defeated with his flying equipment. Seeing that thing waving the claws on its wings, Batman turned sideways to distance himself, and the bat monster immediately grabbed nothing. The monster approached again, and Batman suddenly increased his height, avoiding it while flying above its head, and pressed the 5 fingers of his right palm on its forehead. The glove's electric shock system was activated, and the blue current suddenly exploded all over the monster's body, electrocuting it so that black smoke came out of its body and it screamed. But this bat monster is really thick-skinned. It was temporarily paralyzed by the electric shock. After falling for a while, it seemed to wake up immediately and flapped its wings to rise again. Although it looks like a savage beast, it doesn't seem stupid. When it turned its head to look at Batman, its face was filled with instinctive fear. It found that, although this human was a fake cos with a problem in his brain, he was much more terrifying than it, a real bat. It was very weird and could not be defeated. The idea was difficult, so hurry up. The bat monster didn't even turn around, but flapped its wings desperately, speeding up to run away. But it dared to kill people in Jiangdu's territory. Now that it was caught, how could it be let go again? The detective mode scan has been transmitted back to the bat computer. Friday checked the results and said, "Sir, the preliminary scan shows that the opponent's structure is indeed very similar to that of a bat. It has no vision and relies on ultrasonic feedback to perceive things." Oh, that means, yes. Friday said, the anti-Kryptonian sonic cannon is also effective against it. I know, but I'll change the name. What is anti-Kryptonian? Kryptonians are so friendly and cute, and they are teammates. Why do we want to fight them? Friday smiled. You are the boss, sir. At this time, the sonic weapon has been loaded. As Batman pressed the trigger, the invisible sonic weapon has been activated. Chu Cheng couldn't hear anything from the screen, but the bat monster flying in the air on the opposite side clearly trembled all over and fell down with a scream. A heavy fall created a big hole in the mud. But the bat monster was unexpectedly strong. Although it was seriously injured by the impact of the fall, it was still able to move. It was crawling, using its wings as hands. Its claws sank into the mud, and it tried its best to stay away. That human dressed as a bat. It was too scary. It was simply a sorcery that only monsters could do. He had to flee quickly, but after crawling a few steps, he noticed the boots standing in front of him. His senses, which were gradually recovering, were horrified to find that the terrifying human seemed to be blocking his way. He froze instantly, not daring to move. Chu Cheng watched it through the screen, his thoughts racing. It didn't look like an infected person, nor an ancient one. It looked like some kind of beast different from humans, but it clearly had extraordinary powers that ordinary creatures shouldn't have. A new threat. This is definitely worth his attention. He had to tie this thing up and study it carefully to confirm where this thing came from. Sir, multiple heat sources have been discovered. Huh. Batman turned on the detective mode. With the night vision function of the detective mode, from Batman's perspective new outlines emerged in the darkness. All kinds of inhuman creatures. Some were standing, some were crawling, and some were twice the size of an adult male, all staring at him. He was surrounded. Chapter 282 Too Impolite. Chu Cheng looked around thoughtfully. In addition to the bat monster that had been subdued under his feet, he marked a total of 4 monsters. One of them looked like a black bear, one looked like a wolf-like creature, a crocodile and a lizard. Chu Cheng was surprised that these strange creatures of different species and categories seemed to have formed some kind of organization at some point. It seems necessary to have a good chat with them. The wolf monster looked a bit like the leader. His eyes stayed on the bat monster that was lying on the ground for a moment and made a strange sound. The bat monster shrank its head and groaned weakly twice. Maybe the wolf monster was questioning, was it you who led the devil here? Then the bat monster was expressing injustice. Well, there was no basis for it. It was Chu Cheng's guess. But the 4 monsters all looked unfriendly, and they made vague and dull sounds in their throats. They approached slowly, and their gestures clearly showed a sense of confidence that the advantage of 4 against 1 is mine. Among them, the werewolf and the crocodile were the most important. Chu Cheng noticed that their eyes were clearly like they were looking at the ingredients. It was obvious that they regarded Batman as a snack tonight. Although bats are wild game and are not a healthy option in the menu, these people are obviously not picky and do not have such high requirements for ingredients. However, shaking people is not their patent. Blue ripples emerged out of thin air and a red shadow flashed out. Deadpool descended from the air, his two swords flying, and the sharp blade slashed out with a sound of breaking through the air. The sword light cut through the lizard's solid scales, and cold blood splashed in the gaps where the sword cut. Haha, see, I said you still can't leave me. Deadpool looked at Batman with a smile. Now I should be considered a wonder boy. When will I get paid? But the lizard was furious, and with a strange cry, he didn't even look at it, and followed his intuition to raise his tail and sweep towards the direction of the attack. But Deadpool's sword slashed, and the man disappeared again, and the lizard monster's powerful tail immediately took the time to hit the flat head of the crocodile next to him. The crocodile monster was distracted and slow to react, and didn't notice Deadpool's sneak attack at all. It only felt the wind tightened beside it, and then it was hit by the strange force, making it dizzy. It shook its head drowsily, and after a moment of careful observation, it was sure that it was its teammate who attacked it, and it couldn't help but get furious. Good boy, I knew that you were jealous of my handsomeness, and finally couldn't help showing your true face. So it screamed, and threw the lizard monster to the ground. The lizard screamed, which might mean Big Brother is wronged, but the crocodile didn't care at all, and pressed his teammate to the ground with a check, whether you are healthy or not. The culprit, Deadpool, had already pulled himself out, and appeared next to Batman in a snap. He landed on the ground with his elbows resting on Batman's shoulders, watching the two monsters fighting with a smile. Oh, I definitely don't want to be the unlucky one. Seriously, being beaten by teammates? Even by the standards of cold-blooded animals, it's too much of a failure, right? Then Deadpool seemed to suddenly think of something, screamed ah, and looked at Batman with his mouth covered. Oh my god, I'm not implying you, and the Gotham losers who chase you all day. I mean, how could I imply my boss, right? Batman's expressionless shoulders shrank, and Deadpool's elbow suddenly missed, and he lost his fulcrum, and fell to the ground with a wow. Hey, is this how you treat your wonder boy? Deadpool shouted. At this time, the wolf monster had separated the two brainless teammates and screamed. It seemed that some kind of order should have been issued. The four monsters immediately dispersed and rushed to different positions to launch attacks. It seemed that there was a trace of discipline in it. The wolf monster took the lead and locked onto Batman. Although it had intelligence that ordinary wild animals did not have, it also had a ferocious look like a jackal. When it pounced, it did not seem to be looking for how to attack or defeat the enemy, but was thinking about which piece of meat to start with. It was very fast, and on the basis of having a certain intelligence, it seemed to have some movement and operation. The flying shadow moved along a route similar to an S shape, and with its extraordinary speed, its body shape was like an erratic afterimage, and its movement was difficult to predict. However, Batman's response was to not predict at all. No matter how the opponent played fancy, he just stood there motionless, looking like he had it all planned out. Seeing that he had no reaction, as if he looked down on himself, the wolf monster was very angry at this human's attitude, and felt that it was necessary to let this ignorant guy know how powerful he was. When it was about to rush in front of him, the wolf monster swayed to the left, and the afterimage immediately made a false impression of attacking to the left, but in fact, its body drew a Z-shaped curve, and flashed to the right, opening its bloody mouth, and biting down fiercely, pretending to bite off the opponent's head. However, there was only a crisp sound, and the wolf monster's upper and lower sharp teeth collided like the sound of metal and iron, almost breaking its good teeth. The wolf was almost numb from the severe pain, but at the same time, it widened its eyes, and was extremely puzzled. No, it was clearly sure that it should have bitten it just now. However, its teeth, no, it was the whole person who passed through the bad human, and it felt like biting a ghost. Alan activated the system, and Batman let it pass through the body. While the wolf monster passed through and was confused, he suddenly turned around and threw a grenade. There was a bang, and the freezing grenade exploded, and ice crystals spread, instantly freezing the wolf monster. Until the last moment of being frozen, it still widened its eyes and was full of confusion. Weird. This monster has magic. The crocodile was aiming at Deadpool to bite, but Deadpool's teleportation belt was activated again, and his figure disappeared in a flash. The crocodile also bit nothing, and his little head was full of questions. Where's my dinner? It looked at its lizard teammate next to it vigilantly, as if asking, you stole my snack again. But before the two of them could fight again, Deadpool had already dropped from the sky with a bang, stabbing down with a sword. The crocodile saw the figure flashing out of thin air and couldn't help but look up, opening his mouth in horror. Damn it, dinner hit someone. Deadpool's sword fell down, stabbing straight into its open mouth, piercing through the hard back of the crocodile's head with gushing blood, and directly piercing through its not-so-smart brain. Deadpool killed it instantly with one sword, and landed in the air. It is said that using a sword without pretense is like walking in the night in fine clothes. Deadpool landed with his back facing the crocodile monster that was falling down. He was trying to pose in a showy way, but he didn't expect that he had just made a sword flower with his long sword in his hand. Before he could change the sword into a sheath in a handsome way, he suddenly felt a pain in his chest. Something seemed wrong. When he looked down, he found that the bear monster that was 2 people tall had been behind him without knowing when. It pierced his heart with a claw and stabbed him from back to front. Deadpool's blood splattered and his heart was crushed on the spot. But he turned around without thinking and swung his sword. Although the long sword he was carrying at this time was not a rare item like adamantium, it could be regarded as a sharp weapon that could cut iron like mud. With a backhanded sword, he cut off the bear's paw at the wrist. The bear monster screamed, holding the bleeding arm and retreating, and looked at Deadpool in horror. No, can't this thing feel being pierced through the heart? Deadpool pulled out the half of the bear paw that was stuck in his chest, and the hole in his chest quickly recovered. At the same time, he rolled his eyes under the mask. Really? Do you have any professional ethics as a villain? Haven't you heard that it is impolite to attack someone when they are putting away their swords and posing? At this time, the lizard was looking at Deadpool from the opposite direction. Seeing that he was looking back and beeping without any defense, his eyes lit up. Opportunity. The lizard monster flew forward, opened its mouth and bit Deadpool's shoulder fiercely. Its bite force was so strong that it tore a large piece of flesh from his shoulder before Deadpool even had time to feel it. If it were someone else, he would have fainted from the pain, but Deadpool seemed to be so dull that he didn't feel it. He first turned his head to look at his shocking shoulder with the large missing piece, then calmly looked at the lizard monster chewing his flesh proudly, and said calmly, if I were you, I would probably not do this. This is a bad idea. The lizard monster was enjoying the meal, but halfway through the bite, his face suddenly changed, and he fell to the ground, and vomited all over the floor. Hey, this is too rude. Deadpool shouted, it can't be that bad, right? Chapter 283 Another relic. Chu Cheng also found the lizard monster's expression funny when he saw it through the screen. He thought that this thing was also young, and it was really brave to dare to eat Deadpool's meat. Invulnerability and immortality are things that countless people are willing to exchange for all their wealth and power in any world. So just like Wolverine, whose self-healing factor is coveted by countless people, Deadpool has never lacked people in Marvel who are thinking about his self-healing factor. But they are obviously guys who don't know the heights of the world. Almost everyone who tried this failed, and everyone who wanted to take advantage of Deadpool didn't have good luck in the end. Because he not only has self-healing factors, but also cancer cells. The cancer cells in the Marvel world may be more powerful than those in other worlds, and there is almost no solution. For example, Jane Foster, the female Thor who appeared in Thor 4, proved that even the power of Thor could not resist cancer cells, but would aggravate the symptoms. Cancer cells are almost unsolvable in this worldview. Scientists on Marvel Earth can solve all problems, and can easily create terrifying superpowers, the ultimate weapon, that can even kill gods, but most people are powerless against cancer, whether it is magic or technology. Deadpool happens to be a special case. Deadpool's self-healing factor is much stronger than Wolverine, but it is even a bit too strong. The overly strong self-healing ability causes excessive proliferation of cells throughout his body. In addition, he is not a mutant, and unlike Wolverine's self-healing factor, his body rejects the existence of the self-healing factor. So if it were a normal person, his body should have been killed by his own self-healing factor long ago. But what a coincidence, just like the protagonist of the martial arts routine who is poisoned or injured by chance, and happens to meet the extremely demanding conditions for practicing a peerless bow, Deadpool is exactly the same. When he obtained the self-healing factor, the cancer cells had already spread, and he was already terminally ill and incurable. As a result, the appearance of the self-healing factor immediately formed a delicate balance in his body. The cancer cells and the self-healing factor repelled and destroyed each other, but under the powerful regeneration ability, neither could do anything to the other. So Deadpool is an immortal warrior, but also a walking plague god. Almost every inch of his body is filled with cancer cells, so you can imagine what his meat tastes like. I told you not to bite me. I told you not to bite me. Deadpool chopped the lizard monster's forehead into pieces with one sword after another. It seemed that he was still not satisfied, and he took out his gun and shot it in the forehead. The bear monster with a broken hand next to it was bleeding from the broken wrist and screaming in pain. But the severe pain did not make it retreat, but instead aroused the beast's ferocity. It seemed to catch a glimpse of the culprit of its broken hand, Deadpool, who was concentrating on stabbing his teammates, and the empty door behind his butt was full of flaws. Without thinking, it rushed up again with a strange cry. At this time, Batman, controlled by Chu Cheng, had flashed in front of it. The bear monster was so angry that he didn't care who was standing in front of him. He let out a cry and punched. From its size, it can be seen that it is extremely powerful, and it is also famous for its strength among the whole team of monsters. But Batman didn't fight it head on. Chu Cheng followed the red mark to operate Batman to change direction twice to avoid the huge bear paw. It is very strong, and the bear paw made a whistling sound, but agility is not its strong point. In addition, its broken hand and blood loss affected its physical strength, so it was not difficult to dodge. Batman swayed and drilled under its bear paw, rushed forward 2 steps, cleverly went behind it, and pressed its back hand on the back of its neck. The bear monster felt pain, roared, turned around and punched, but Batman had already withdrawn after succeeding. An empty syringe had fallen at its feet and was crushed by it. Batman's special muscle relaxant was mixed with some anesthetic function. It was also part of his unconventional weapons and was prepared for superpowers like Bane. Even Bane, who had gained superpowers, could be knocked down with one shot. If an ordinary person was hit by one shot, he would definitely die on the spot. The bear monster had a broken hand and was already in a bad state due to blood loss. The effect of taking such a shot was particularly significant. Its vision immediately blurred, and it stumbled forward, waving its bare paws and slapping twice weakly. Batman took 2 steps to avoid it and jabbed his fist into the bear monster's face. The electric shock gloves activated, and the pale blue current spread throughout its body, immediately shocking its fur and making it fall down with its head raised. Over there, Deadpool had already stabbed the monster's head into pieces. He took back his sword with a sense of satisfaction, let out a long breath, and wiped the non-existent sweat on his hood. It's really hard. I'm exhausted. On Friday, make an anonymous call to the 9th department. From Batman's perspective, Chu Cheng stood among the monsters that were knocked down all over the ground and said, "Tell them that there are some things to clean up here, and they need a laboratory to study them. It's not an infected person, but it looks a bit like an infected animal. But according to the intelligence so far, the infection should only be effective on humans. I have never heard of creatures other than humans being affected. If this is true, then the prevention mechanism for the source of infection needs to be adjusted again. All animals living on the Earth star must be included in the prevention mechanism for the transmission chain. First of all, we must conduct in-depth research and treatment on the existing monsters to confirm what they are. Although there are many black technologies in Chu Cheng's technical modules, and several technology giants have developed powerful equipment, they do not actually have the ability to conduct scientific research. Their technical strength is essentially the custom equipment function in the game. They can only visualize the existing technology in the database. Analyzing and studying unknown things is not their specialty. This part still needs to be done by Miyazaki the old thief. I'm already dialing. Sir. Friday is very efficient. She is multitasking, and making a phone call does not hinder her assistance to Chu Cheng. I didn't get a chance to remind you during the battle just now, but the detective mode scan has some other discoveries. Friday reminded, there may be something underground where we are. What is it? Chu Cheng turned on the detective mode again and conducted a deep scan below again. The scan results show that there may be a hole underground, an unknown space. Friday said, in addition, there are marked magnetic characteristic signals below, and there are certain infection source reactions. So we are indeed standing on top of an infection source. Chu Cheng frowned. Is it that thing that infects ordinary animals and makes them like this? There is such a possibility. The scanning depth of the detective mode is limited, and it is difficult to make an accurate judgment, but combined with the existing scan results, I think Friday paused. Point, we may be standing on a relic. Special Service Division 9 arrived soon. This is also what makes Chu Cheng feel that the current stage is more convenient than before. He does not have to do everything himself. The linkage with institutions including the 9th Department allows him to obtain more manpower and resources that can be mobilized at any time to do some necessary but trivial things. The people in these institutions and departments have undergone special training, and they can play a role in scientific research, combat, logistics and cleaning. These are all resources that can be used. As Chu Cheng's game scope is getting wider and wider and more affairs are increasing, resources are exactly what he lacks the most. The reasonable and maximum use of limited resources can also help him a lot. Several monster corpses were quickly lifted onto the transport plane and pulled back to the mothership. A team of eager experts led by Miyazaki Leozai can't wait to cut them into pieces. The first team of agents from the 9th Department arrived at the scene, led by Agent Luo Yajin, and the little lolly Leela of the Ancients also came. As the last ancient in the true sense, she is now a model prisoner. Usually she stays in her cell and doesn't go anywhere. She answers all the questions raised by the insane asylum. She also cooperates very well when it comes to research and extracting data. She can even go out for some fresh air and do some field work occasionally. She is so useful. The reason why I brought this ancient lolly here today is because Batman has received information that there may be some unknown ruins buried outside Jiangdu City. As we all know, ruins have always been closely related to the ancients. Lettuce, Leela and the other 5 were released because of the trouble in the ruins last time. So if anyone on the Earth Star knows what is buried in the ruins outside Jiangdu, Leela is undoubtedly the best choice. A research team from the 9th Division arrived and started working quickly. They set up a simple camp and equipped various sophisticated equipment. The sonar device was mapping the appearance of the underground space, and several teams of experts were conducting detection and scanning with handheld equipment. When Leela arrived at the scene and saw several monster corpses being carried away and loaded into the transport plane, she couldn't help but frown. "What do you know?" Batman said on the side. "Well, I guess so. But if you think it has something to do with an ancient being, you might be wrong." Leela said, "This is not the work of an ancient being. But you know what it is." Leela did not deny it, but paused and looked at them with a strange expression. "I guess you must have heard of creatures like dragons, right? If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelos. There you'll find the original version of this story and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels." Chapter 284. Who is hitting me? Dragon? Agent Luo Yajin showed an interested expression. "Is what you are talking about the same thing we are thinking about? If it is a common fantasy creature in your human mythology, I think it should be," Leela said. "But you just said it was a fantasy." "Yes, but fantasy always has traces. Humans in ancient times recorded many things they did not understand. Due to the lack of solid evidence and the rumors being too far-fetched, they are often easily regarded as fabrications by later generations." "You mean that the myths are true and dragons really exist?" "Not entirely. Some of your myths are exaggerated by later generations," Leela said, "but some are indeed not exaggerated. Yes, dragons are real, but not as mysterious as you think. They are nothing more than an ancient race that once lived on the earth star like us ancients. Are you trying to say that we are just facing ordinary large animals? That's not entirely. Leela showed a serious expression. We ancients have obtained extraordinary seeds, which are extraordinary compared to most other species. I believe you already know enough about this. Dragons are similar beings. They acquired extraordinary powers in the distant past, and like the ancients, they have the ability to release infection and transform other species mentally and physically. She paused here and continued hesitantly. But even for us ancients, we don't have many opportunities to deal with dragons. I have never seen dragons with my own eyes, but I have heard about them from the ancients of other tribes in my memories. According to rumors, although dragons also have similar phenomena to those of infected people wherever they go, they rarely appear in creatures with developed intelligence. This is completely opposite to the ancients. Species with relatively less developed intelligence often have abnormal reactions wherever they pass. Animals. Batman said in a deep voice. Everyone immediately thought of the monsters that Batman had knocked down all over the ground. Their common feature is that they can be seen as what species they originally belonged to, but their strength or appearance has become more exaggerated. The people present were all agents of the 9th Special Service, who have been dealing with infected people for many years. They quickly thought of those humans who were affected by extraordinary powers, and whose bodies became twisted and weird. Looking at these mutated monsters at this time, they soon felt that it seemed to be a similar situation. But this shouldn't be the case. Leela frowned and shook her head, as if she was talking to herself. Dragons shouldn't exist. You just said they are real. Luo Yajin reminded. No, I mean they are real, but they should have become a thing of the past. Leela said, this is the confirmed news I got when I was reborn last time. They told me that the dragon race has been wiped out and completely disappeared from this world. We ancients have some specific sources of information, so this rumor should be relatively reliable. Besides, it has been a long time since the last appearance of dragons, and there should have been no dragons in your human history for a long time. But these monsters are obviously the work of a dragon. I'm a little confused. The ancient channels she mentioned could not be confirmed, but it was true that there had been no rumors of dragons among humans for a long time. It is possible that the reason why dragons in ancient times lived in myths was because of the underdeveloped information transmission technology, but modern times are already the information age, and if there are still dragon activities, it is impossible not to attract attention. While talking, a researcher in uniform had already trotted over. He saluted Luo Yajin and said, the preliminary exploration has been completed. It is confirmed that there is some kind of ruined structure underneath. We found a covered entrance 5 kilometers away. Very good. Luo Yajin turned around. It looks like it's time to get to work. Seeing is believing. No matter what it is, we will know it by going down and taking a look. He had already prepared the manpower and planned to lead a vanguard team in person, and they would go down to explore as soon as they found the entrance. No, not you. Batman interrupted him. You just wait in the camp. I and my people will go down. The performance of the Special Service 9 during the last exploration of the ruins was not good. Everything in the ruins is unknown, and it is unknown what kind of enemies or mechanisms they will encounter. Without key intelligence, no matter how many people go down, they may be a burden. Instead, only the superheroes on Chu Cheng's side are not afraid of life and death, and are the best candidates to go down and find out. And you? Batman looked at Leela. As the only remaining ancient, she is the only one who knows something about the so-called dragon race, and may be helpful. In addition, she was strong and the ancients had strange abilities, so she would have no problem protecting herself, no matter what she encountered down there. Okay. Luo Yajin was a little unhappy, and it seemed that he was unhappy about losing the opportunity to partner with Batman again. But he also knew that it might be very dangerous down there, and if they really encountered any extraordinary situation, they would indeed become a burden, so he did not insist. Leela was now half an agent of the 9 departments. A pinhole camera was installed on her in the camp, so that they could also understand the situation in the ruins from the ground. According to the results of the terrain scan, they quickly found the entrance. A dim passage led directly to the depths of the underground, and a stone staircase appeared in their field of vision. It was very obvious that it was artificially built just by looking at this entrance. Batman took the lead and walked in front. In the detective mode, the passage was as bright as day, and even every particle of dust flying in the air seemed extremely clear. It's incredible. Leela couldn't help but sigh. After walking forward along the underground tunnel for a while, the view in front of her suddenly became clear. The interior was like a different world, or more like the legendary Peach Blossom Spring. An independent world, with unknown flowers and plants everywhere. There were towering ancient trees, rugged rocks, and even water that came from nowhere and fell from a height, like a waterfall, exploding white waves on a clear water surface that was visible at a glance. I've heard people say that dragons live in their own world, Leela said softly, but I always thought it was an exaggeration, part of the story. I never thought about it. Save your exclamation for now, we have company. Batman's voice drew her attention back. Leela looked around and found that Batman was right. Some things that looked like animals, but more ferocious than any beast you could encounter in the wild, looked exactly like the ones Batman fought outside. They didn't look very hospitable and seemed to be dissatisfied with the intrusion into their territory, but at the same time they were happy that they had an extra meal today. The good news is that you don't have to rush to order tequila today. Someone will come to slide. The bad news is that there are too many monks and too little meat, and these two may not be enough for their number. The natives are not very friendly. Leela narrowed her eyes. It looks like we have something to do. No need, Batman said coldly, but he stood still, as if everything was under control. Puff. There was a sound like flesh being pierced. A monster in the herd was suddenly pierced through the front of its head, leaving a huge hole. Before it could figure out what was going on, it fell to the ground with its eyes wide open, blood gushing out, and its eyes were full of confusion. The beasts next to it were also stunned, not understanding why their teammates suddenly died. But before their slow brains had time to think, there was another puff of flesh entering the flesh, and another blood arrow shot out, and the second beast fell down. Even Leela widened her eyes and looked around in astonishment. But she was sure that this bat monster had not moved a finger from beginning to end, but he could kill this mutant monster in seconds from a distance. Could it be that he had held back when he fought with her before? At this time, the herd was in chaos. Who am I? Where am I? Who is hitting me? Chapter 285, The Big Monster. The beasts were confused, and the people watching the battle through the screen were also confused. The people in the camp saw the appearance of such a large number of beasts through the camera carried by Leela, and they were all nervous, thinking that there would be a fierce fight next. No one thought that the two sides had not even started fighting, and the monsters in the herd fell to the ground with howls one after another, just like they were possessed by evil spirits. The first reaction of the people watching the scene was naturally to think of the powerful Batman. After all, the master just looked like he was fully confident, and Leela, who was monitoring the main world, seemed to be confused about this, so it must be his handiwork again. So what kind of metaphysical technology is this? Can it actually kill people from a distance? Leela is an ancient after all, and she was at the scene in person, so she soon saw the clues vaguely. She squinted her eyes and saw a vague shadow flying and jumping among the howling beasts. It was very small and moved very fast. Although she had excellent eyesight, she still looked carefully for a long time before she seemed to have a clue. It looked like a person smaller than an ant. The ancient's human-shaped body was originally created by themselves. In many aspects, it was far superior to ordinary people, and could be adjusted at any time according to needs. At this time, Leela adjusted her vision function, and her eyes locked on the target like a high-powered lens. She only vaguely watched the figure moving and erratic. It kicked a fierce beast's forehead with all its strength and jumped up. The small black dot was like a bullet, aiming at a fierce beast not far away that was looking around without any defense. With a muffled sound, the beast's skin and tissue were broken. The small black dot shot through the beast with its body like a bullet, making a hole in its head and passing out from the other side. The monster screamed and fell to the ground. The man flew out, rolled twice in the air, and then stepped on the monster before it fell to the ground, kicked hard, and launched out like a small rocket, locking onto another beast not far away. A group of beasts were in chaos, and they didn't notice such a hidden little guy rushing out at high speed. There was another slight sound of flesh entering, and another beast was pierced out with a scream. Leela's eyes widened. What the hell? Question mark? She had guessed that it might be some kind of superhuman with the ability to shrink his body, most likely one of Batman's weird teammates. She had seen similar abilities before, and humans affected by the infection had also shown the ability to adjust their body size, but at most they became as small as babies, which was basically useless. And according to common sense, if the body is reduced, the strength will inevitably be reduced. Most of the natural world follows the law of judging strength by size and tonnage, and there is a reason for it. If a person shrinks his body to the size of a mosquito or fly, then he should be crushed into slag with bare hands in front of a normal person. But what's the situation with this person? It is true that size can determine strength normally, but at this time, Chu Cheng is operating the famous Avenger Ant-Man. It is well known that Ant-Man relies on something called Pym particles to adjust his body size. The particles collected by the first generation Ant-Man Hank Pym from the subspace are a specialty of Marvel. Because this particle is his patent in Marvel, it is also named after him. Pym particles are a very unreasonable thing. Sometimes Marvel tries to give a reasonable explanation for its ability to manipulate body size, such as changing the distance between the molecules of the applicable object, but soon they find that this statement is difficult to justify, and it is even more impossible to explain why Ant-Man can sometimes shrink to a size smaller than a molecule, so they simply give up treatment and start to play badly. Anyway, we have such a thing, and the final right of interpretation belongs to Marvel and every screenwriter who has ever worked on Ant-Man, so let's do whatever we want. So there are a lot of seriously unscientific aspects of Pym particles. One example is its effect on Ant-Man's physical fitness. Shrinking to the size of an ant will not only not affect his strength, but will even have a physical enhancement effect, allowing him to gain superhuman arm strength. The official setting set gives Ant-Man a level of enhanced arm strength of 3, which is probably one level above the human limit and below the super soldier. According to a simple pressure calculation formula, when the force bearing area is infinitely reduced, the pressure caused by the force will be infinitely magnified at the point where the force is applied. So although Ant-Man will intentionally control his strength and not easily hurt people after training, imagine using his reduced volume fist to hit with all his strength. It feels like Superman trying to lift an airplane without a biological force field. Even steel alloys cannot withstand the enhanced fist force that explodes from that tiny point. So Ant-Man can completely use his body to turn into a deadly bullet. Although a bunch of ferocious beasts are not very smart, they soon discovered that there is a small insect jumping around. The beasts suddenly became even more chaotic, roaring loudly as they tried to catch the annoying bug. Chu Cheng's Ant-Man perspective also looked very thrilling. He had just passed through the body of a beast, and a red circle appeared under his feet when he landed. That was the game's representation of the enemy's attack landing point, prompting the player to dodge. Ant-Man crouched down and slid forward. Although he was small in size, he was strong, so actions such as jumping and leaping were particularly effective on his almost weightless body. With a full strength slide, his body had already slid straight out for a long distance, and the beast suddenly stepped into the air and stomped on the ground. He slid up and pressed the button to activate the Pym particles. His body was no longer shrinking, and his body suddenly expanded and grew taller. In the surprised eyes of the beasts and spectators, he grew rapidly and returned to the size of an ordinary person in the blink of an eye. More beasts were stunned for a moment, and they had never expected that a strange man would suddenly appear out of thin air in the middle of their formation. This man was wearing a red uniform and a silver helmet. His head looked a bit like some kind of insect creature. Some of the less intelligent beasts were even dazed. Is there such a teammate among us? But Chu Cheng would not stop. Ant-Man kicked away a thin and fluffy creature in front of him, and at the same time, he had 3 darts in his hand. The 3 monsters closer to him shouted in unison and pounced on him. Ant-Man turned around and swung his hand, and 3 silver darts spun out of thin air. The three monsters were hit at the same time, screaming in unison, and then disappeared from everyone's sight with a snap, without a trace. The 9 people who saw this scene from the surveillance screen instantly widened their eyes. WTF? Question mark? What is this? A living person? No, a living monster? Such a big beast, it disappeared just like that. Question mark? They immediately realized that this was not the weapon they had always known. It was not a weapon that attacked by traditional killing modes such as high temperature melting and impact vibration. No matter how powerful that weapon is, at least the ashes should be left for people, right? But this feeling is different. What they saw before them was as if the monster that was hit had evaporated directly from the face of the earth. It didn't seem like it was knocked down and destroyed, but rather it seemed that its entire existence was directly wiped out of thin air. It was simply an incredible power. Don't tell them this thing is also some kind of advanced technology. Question mark? A pin drop could be heard in the camp. Some people looked at each other. No one dared to speak, but each of them read similar thoughts from each other's eyes. If such technology is weaponized, wouldn't it directly defeat the entire modern military from a conceptual level? Now that he can wipe out the existence of a monster with a wave of his hand, what about an airplane? An aircraft carrier? Or even a larger target? Just thinking about it is chilling. This also made them realize that their understanding of these gods so far, even after being refreshed again and again, has only touched the tip of the iceberg. So how advanced and terrifying is the technology of their alliance? Chapter 286 Ant-Man. In fact, it is not as scary as they think. If the opponent is really wiped out directly, then the nature is completely different. It is a conceptual weapon, like the ultimate move Omega Ray of DC villain Darkseid, which has risen to the level of cosmic gods. From the picture, it seems that the opponent is directly eliminated, but it is not. They are just shrunk. Those are the darts used in the Ant-Man movie, which are the entry-level equipment for beginner Ant-Man. The darts are also filled with pine particles. There are enlarged darts and reduced darts, which can enlarge or shrink any person or object. In the original work, shrinking the enemy is also one of the most commonly used tricks for Ant-Man to clear the field. He once developed the pine particle cannon, which can turn an entire military fortress with live ammunition into a non-threatening toy. During his transformation and name change to Yellow Jacket, he also designed a miniature gun with a built-in super small prison. Any opponent hit by the gun will be shrunk and absorbed into the prison built into the gun. From the outside, it looks like they were directly wiped out, shocking super criminals for a whole year. In the Avengers animation, an invading alien empire brought a planetary bomb to blow up the entire Earth, but Ant-Man shrunk it to the subatomic level with a single shot. The explosion of the planetary bomb shocked the alien empire for a whole year. So here again, the pine particles are very useful. The effect of this thing can be adjusted according to Ant-Man's needs. When it acts on Ant-Man's armor, Ant-Man's body becomes smaller and his physical strength is increased to a superhuman level because of the particles. But when it is weaponized to shrink the opponent's physical strength and weapon firepower will be proportionally weakened after the opponent becomes smaller. So when someone questioned how a guy who can only grow bigger and smaller could become the world's greatest Avengers, he obviously didn't understand how unreasonable Ant-Man was when he started to cheat. Of course, the darts that Ant-Man is equipped with are not that outrageous, but the principle is the same, and it is enough to deal with these guys. He killed 3 beasts in an instant, and the other one roared and pounced forward. Just as the giant claw was about to land on Ant-Man's head, he suddenly shrank with a whoosh and turned back to the size of an ant, as if he had disappeared out of thin air. The powerful claw slapped the ground again with a slap, creating a huge pit. Ant-Man shrank in size and ran along the arm of the beast. After a run up, he jumped up, launched himself, and shot out with a Superman punch, passing through the monster again like a cannonball. When he came out from the other end, a flying ant had already come like a fighter jet. Ant-Man rushed out of the beast's body and landed straight on the ant's back. He rode the ant and flew up, as if he had turned into a bug-shaped fighter jet. That was the function of Ant-Man's helmet. He could control all insect creatures through his mind, but it worked best on ants. Ant-Man in the movie always used flying ants as vehicles. Carpenter ants, Ant-Man's flying car. They grow wings when they leave the ant nest to establish a territory, but they fall off when they mate. So don't think it looks so handsome carrying Ant-Man to the sky and the earth all day long, but the price is that you can't experience the joy of friendship. The other beast pounced angrily, biting with its sharp teeth and dancing with its claws, and the wind whistled around its body, but it couldn't catch this annoying little bug. Ant-Man controlled the flying ant to shuttle back and forth between its dancing claws, closing in enough distance, using the force from the ant's back to jump, and turned into a projectile again, to penetrate in a straight line. When he passed out from the other side, he hugged his body and spun around. His body quickly grew larger again, and when he landed, he threw 2 more darts, and the 2 beasts behind him and in front of him disappeared with 2 whooshes. After the 2 darts were successful, Ant-Man's uniform button was activated again, and his body shrank rapidly again. When he turned back to the size of an ant, the flying ant had already flown below to wait in advance. Ant-Man landed lightly on the ant's back, flapped his wings, and accelerated into the air again. The beasts were so anxious that they howled and screamed, but they had no way to deal with this little bug. He was seen to be big and small, moving freely between the monsters. Those beasts with thick skin and lower defense were pierced through, while those with higher defense and difficult to penetrate were eaten by shrinking darts and turned into miniature size. For opponents who have turned into ant size, the means of dealing with them are naturally as many as you want. Ant-Man can turn back to normal size and crush it into slag with 1 foot, or even if he remains the same ant size, the opponent is definitely not his opponent. Because as mentioned before, Ant-Man's strength is enhanced when he is reduced, but the strength of the opponent reduced by his weapon will be reduced in proportion to his size. Therefore, when everyone is the same ant size, Ant-Man is basically Superman, and any action he makes is earth-shaking to the ants. Seeing that a large number of beasts are constantly decreasing and falling at a speed visible to the naked eye, and from beginning to end, he has not even touched the opponent. Everyone is stunned. Leela, who was at the scene, had better eyesight and knowledge. She could tell at a glance that the beast that was hit did not disappear but shrunk. But this scene only made her more horrified. She saw that, although the little man was unstoppable, after he became smaller, the other beasts were really as threatening as ants after they became smaller. Isn't this ability too buggy? Question mark? Imagine if this trick was used on the ancients, shrinking their bodies that were originally tens or hundreds of meters tall to an insignificant ant. How much of their proud power could be exerted? She had never tried it before, and she was unsure, but if possible, she would never try it in this life. At this time, from the perspective of an observer, she was already frightened by this strange ability. She glanced at Batman beside her and saw that he was as serious as ever, with a stern face and no words, and his expression was like, "What's the fuss about this?" It was as if such perverted weapons and technology were commonplace in their alliance, and not worth mentioning. This made Leela shudder again. She now felt more and more that not following Ophelia to provoke these people was the wisest decision she had ever made in her life. Otherwise she would have been killed without knowing how. If it were them, maybe they would really have a chance to fight against the gods from outer space, right? A moment later, all the beasts in the field had been cleared out. In the eyes of everyone, there was no one, and suddenly there was a whoosh, and Ant-Man appeared out of thin air and landed on the ground full of corpses. At this time, Ant-Man's battle suit was covered in blood, and he looked very embarrassed. But he shook his head, and a helpless voice came from under the electronic helmet. "I hate violence." Leela secretly glanced at the poor monsters lying all over the ground, and her facial muscles twitched, feeling as if she had heard a great irony. "Why don't you tell those unlucky guys who died?" "Of course, I can only think about this in my heart. I dare not say it, at least not in front of this ant-like guy." Leela, super obedient. JPG. Let's go. Batman walked over the corpses on the ground with an expressionless face. "Wait, sir." Friday reminded beside Chu Cheng. "A huge heat source was found, very close to you, underground. It's coming out." Chapter 287 Dragon. A huge heat source is approaching, and the energy intensity is not low. While Friday was speaking, Chu Cheng had already switched to Batman's perspective and turned on the detective mode. Without a reminder, he had already seen a ball of hot light underground from this perspective, which was particularly eye-catching in the detective mode, and was rising rapidly. "Sir, you have to leave there quickly." Boom. Although it can be regarded as a warning, it is still somewhat limited. The ground where the two stood was suddenly broken, and the soil of the mud planet and the corpses of fierce beasts all over the ground flew everywhere. The scene was quite terrifying for a while. Fortunately, it was considered to be a reminder from the fifth sister in advance. Batman almost blocked the first half second to blow up his cloak in advance, and an acceleration on his back helped him rise into the air, narrowly avoiding the impact from the underground. But Leela was not so lucky. She was hit head on, and was blown up into the air. In an awkward posture, she barely opened her colorful wings and barely stabilized in the air. While Lala's body was repairing itself, she glanced at Batman beside her with some dissatisfaction. It seemed to be complaining that he had clearly noticed something was wrong, but he only cared about taking off by himself and completely ignored his teammates. Fortunately, she was an ancient with thick skin and flesh, which was more durable. Otherwise, if it were someone else, they would be crippled if not dead. At this time, they all saw the source of the heat. It had a nearly perfect body shape and a strong body. The bone spurs penetrated its body, making its back look like a rugged rock. A dragon. The claws of the thing first broke through the stratum and grabbed the two people in midair, like slapping a fly. But Batman and Leela's aerial maneuverability was quite amazing. The two of them pulled away from the left and right. Batman pulled away and flew along the arc from a high altitude, taking in the image of the thing. Leela was in the opposite direction, and the monitoring equipment she carried also helped the ninth department see the picture. "Damn, it's really a dragon," Luo Yajin whispered. "This world is getting more and more crazy. They are still here." Leela also sounded quite surprised, but they are obviously extinct many years ago. Seeing is believing. It is obviously still here. But don't worry, it won't be long. As he spoke, Ant-Man threw two darts, which flew towards the dragon. He had used this trick several times in the previous battle. Everyone had seen the power of this weapon. Just one hit could turn any powerful enemy into an ant, literally. But the premise is that it hits. The dragon roared, and the wind rolled up immediately. The two darts hit the invisible cyclone in midair and deflected to the side. One of them hit a giant tree in the forest, and the thick trunk immediately shrank and disappeared with a whoosh. The other dart fell to the ground with a tumble. The pine particles were activated, and with another whoosh, a whole piece of ground suddenly collapsed. "It saw your fight just now," Leela said. "It knows what that thing can do. It won't let you hit it easily." "Good reminder, I'll remember it," Ant-Man said, and saw that the dragon had already roared and leaped towards him. Ant-Man immediately activated the power of his suit, shrank in size, and flew into the air in the whirlwind, stirred up by the dragon. The dragon's attack missed, and the ground was blown up with dust. Batman flew over the sky and took advantage of the moment when Ant-Man was almost attracted to fly over the dragon's head with his wings spread. The moment he flew over, he opened his 5 fingers and stretched out his hand to press, and the electric current immediately poured out, crackling and exploding on the dragon's head. But it had no effect. The scalp of this guy was also surprisingly hard, and the voltage of the glove seemed not enough to penetrate it. This aroused its attention, and it turned its head with great dissatisfaction and swept its long tail powerfully. Batman retracted his wings, turned upside down, and dropped abruptly with thrusters spraying vertically upwards. He avoided the powerful sweep and threw out a freezing grenade. But the dragon roared again, and an invisible cyclone erupted. The light and small grenade was blown away in midair, and a large piece of ice crystal exploded. However, the freezing effect was inevitably greatly reduced because it failed to directly touch the target. The dragon roared again, and a cyclone erupted around it. The refraction of light made the space seem to be erratic and distorted. It was estimated that the temperature around it suddenly rose. Batman was also blown away by the cyclone, but his battle suit was enough to resist the high temperature brought by the cyclone. Chu Cheng was now experienced. He did not let Batman open his cape to forcibly resist the wind pressure at the first time, but let him fly a distance under the action of the wind, and then suddenly spread his wings to buffer the momentum of falling. Batman's falling speed was completely offset when he almost touched the ground. The back thrusters ignited again, and his body drew an arc that almost touched the ground and lifted up. When he lifted into the air, the tail flame blew up a cloud of dust on the ground. Chu Cheng's perspective changed and switched to Ant-Man, who was also shrinking in size in midair. Ant-Man landed on a flying ant in midair and glanced at Leela as he lifted into the air. "So you plan to keep doing this?" Leela released the flame, but the dragon's skin was harder than steel, and the flame could not cause any damage in her current form. She said with some displeasure, "Dragons are the most perfect race that has ever existed on the Earth star. What you put into my body affected my ability, and I couldn't give it my all." "Put it into your body? Is such a bad statement really good?" But Chu Cheng understood. After all, the 9th division couldn't really let her run around, so there must be safety measures. "I guess the old thief Miyazaki has developed some implants that can suppress her ability." "It doesn't matter." Chu Cheng was just complaining and didn't really expect to rely on her for damage output. There is an old saying that, if you really want to rank up, you have to learn not to rely on your teammates. Back then, Chu Cheng preferred single-player games to competitive games in the game area, and now that he has obtained this cheat code game, he feels that it is tailor-made for him. The battles so far have taught him to be accustomed to being prepared to deal with all situations by himself, and never expect anything from his teammates. Now he also happens to have a new big move, and this is a good opportunity to experiment. Select the hero Ant-Man. Ultimate skill, Giantization. The shrunken Ant-Man rode the flying ant into the sky, adjusted the options, locked the body shape, and then jumped off the ant's back and activated the button halfway through the free fall. The ant-like body expanded hundreds and thousands of times in a very short moment, and instantly became like a pillar supporting the sky. He descended from the sky with a weight that seemed to weigh tons, and landed in a pose that would make a road maintenance worker's blood pressure soar. The moment his feet touched the ground, the entire land seemed to sink a lot, and the dust was stirred up. Ant-Man, standing tall. The 9 people in the camp who saw this scene opened their mouths wide. "What the hell?" Question mark. Body size is always the most intuitive way to bring a sense of oppression. When facing an individual who is a head taller than themselves, creatures will feel instinctive fear and release dangerous signals in their minds. And seeing such a giant with their own eyes, especially seeing the earth-shaking movement when he landed perfectly, it makes people feel as if it has landed on their hearts. Even the dragon facing Ant-Man was stunned. Looking at this individual who suddenly became taller than itself, it opened its mouth and made a vague sound. It is estimated that the translation into dragon language may be similar to abba abba abba. It was a little confused. Shouldn't this be a human? Humans existed in the era when it lived, so it was not unfamiliar. But in its impression, humans are tiny beings everywhere and might not even attract attention when they pass by. So how can this little thing become so big? Even to the same level as itself, a noble dragon? Question mark. No, this is impossible. Roar. The dragon roared, and the dragon opened its huge mouth, and the dragon's roar penetrated the sky. The entire paradise-like space trembled with this long roar, and the roar was long and endless, which was terrifying. Faced with this amazing momentum and the king-like pressure, Ant-Man punched it. The sound sounded like a muffled thunder stuck in the throat, exploding dully. The roar stopped abruptly, and the dragon head that took the right hook shook, and a white air circle visible to the naked eye exploded at the part where the fist and face touched. It flew out exaggeratedly, and when its body fell to the ground, a row of dust waves exploded with a rumble, and the visual effect was extremely shocking. When the dragon fell, its head seemed to buzz for a moment, and it was completely unable to comprehend what was happening. Chapter 288, This Thing is Talking? The dragon was stunned by the punch, and Leela was also a little confused. The ancients can build their bodies with the shield of that is, and their bodies are very hard to be completely destroyed. In addition, some of the ancients who are good at fighting have powerful supernatural powers. In fact, their strength is not inferior to that of the dragons. But the reason why they also say that dragons are the most perfect species is because they have naturally better physical abilities. The body of the ancients built with the shield of the Tis looks huge, but they are often better at transforming various weapons with tentacles as the main attack. In terms of brute force, they are actually far less powerful than the dragons. But in their impression, the dragons, which are famous for their strength, were actually suppressed by a human. No, looking at this giant-like size in mythology, and the earth-shaking momentum of the punch, you are not even sure if this thing is still a human. Ant-Man, as a veteran of the Avengers, is naturally also very capable. In the original work, the main members of the Avengers, when they were first established, were Iron Man, the Hulk and Thor, and each of them was a master in his own field. At that time, Ant-Man's abilities were not fully developed. He felt that he was dwarfed by his teammates, and that his only ability was to turn into an ant, which seemed a bit insignificant. So he worked hard to further develop the potential of pi particles, and gained the ability to enlarge himself, and strengthen his strength. The second generation Ant-Man in the movie also reproduced this ability, but the film did not explain his giant power in detail. However, according to the official data, the second generation Ant-Man's power increase in the giant state is relatively weak, but the power rating is also level 5. In the movie Avengers 4, the Black Dwarf, who is known for his strength among the 5 black generals under Thanos, was controlled by Spider-Man, and Ant-Man kicked him to death on the spot, which shows how destructive he is. The giant state of the first generation Ant-Man Hank Pym is far beyond the second generation, and the power rating is as high as level 7. In the power rating of Marvel's superpowered people, level 5 represents beyond ordinary people, which is about 25 to 75 tons of power. Level 7 is the highest level in the entire rating system, which means difficult to calculate. The representative figure is a Hulk. The lowest limit is more than 1000 tons, and the upper limit is beyond the calculation range and is unknown. But it is not without disadvantages. Ant-Man's gigantism is extremely unscientific and a bit painful, because he rarely strengthens his strength, but not his endurance. So although he has the strength to match Hulk, he is not as durable as Hulk. In other words, he is also a huge live target, while gaining huge strength. The reason why the giant Ant-Man can carry the whole game in the Civil War of Captain America 3 is that the superheroes tacitly do not kill him during the Civil War. Otherwise, let alone Vision, who was paddling on the sidelines, and was always messing around except for the last moment, when he hit his teammates. Even if Iron Man and War Machine used lethal weapons directly, Ant-Man would have been full of holes. Maybe this is one of the reasons why the giant Ant-Man clearly has the power of level 7, but usually only does logistics, and does not personally go into battle. But when it comes to showing strength alone, Ant-Man is still quite powerful. After the successful punch, Ant-Man, under Chu Cheng's control, was in front again, and his huge palm grabbed the dragon's shoulder. The dragon screamed strangely, but was still pressed to the ground. Ant-Man stepped forward and rode on it in a posture of surrender, suppressing the dragon's claws and wings under his crotch, and began to punch the ground with his fists alternately. His punches were fierce, and every punch made the earth tremble, and the deafening sound was chilling. Behind him, Leela was floating in the air and watched the dragon being humiliated and punched, as if the entire space they were in was shaking with every punch of the giant, and she felt extremely horrified. A dragon, a real dragon, was pressed to the ground and hammered by brute force. Leela once thought it was a pity that she was the only ancient who saw this scene. She wanted to pull up all the dead and sealed compatriots in the underworld and let them all see this outrageous opening the door to the outrageous mother. Why am I the only one who has to endure the torture of having my worldview shattered? In fact, although the strength of the Ant-Man operated by Chu Cheng is completely suppressed in the giant state, the overall melee quality should still be inferior to that of the dragon. It's just that he suddenly attacked from the ant state, and the dragon had never seen such a weird scene of human giantization. It was caught off guard and KO'd by a punch, and directly gave the opponent the riding achievement. To be honest, Ant-Man's position is actually quite good. If it is replaced with a normal unlimited fighting, it would have been a suppressing position with a huge advantage. If the giant Captain America was replaced on this dragon instead of Ant-Man, with Captain America's martial arts attainments, this dragon could have been announced to be carried away. But Hank Pym is just a scientist after all, and he doesn't have the power they have. Although he learned some fighting moves in the Avengers, there is still a gap between him and the Master. Although it seemed that it had been controlled, it was not completely controlled. After a series of punches on the ground, the dragon dodged a little by dodging with its head and struggling with its claws. Finally, after recovering, it struggled hard and pulled out the tail that Ant-Man had intentionally controlled under his crotch and lashed Ant-Man's back from behind like a whip. Ant-Man groaned and fell off the dragon's body. There was a rumbling sound, and a large area of rocks and trees were smashed. Chu Cheng immediately rolled over and got up. When he got up, he saw that the dragon had opened its mouth. From Ant-Man's perspective, he could clearly see its sharp teeth, the structure of its mouth, and the flames in the depths of its throat that were like the raging fire of hell. "Get out of the way," Leela shouted. "It's dragon fire." Dragons are not only powerful, but also what makes countless ancients afraid of them, in addition to their unreasonable strength, is the dragon fire that even the shield of the Titans can hardly resist. When the ancient ones declared that nothing in the world could hurt Tisdon, they actually assumed that dragons were excluded, because they all thought that dragons had long since disappeared from the Earth star. If they knew that there were still dragons left in the world, they would not be so sure. The giant Ant-Man was not very mobile, not to mention that he had not yet finished his tumbling and receiving action, and it was impossible for him to avoid it before he stood up. Chu Cheng also knew clearly that the giant Ant-Man was strong in strength, but had average endurance. If he was hit by this attack, he would definitely be killed on the spot. Although it would not be a real death for the virtual character, at least in this battle, he could not be counted on. He had to wait for a resurrection CD. However, the dragon flames erupted from the iron-like mouth of the dragon. The sky and the earth seemed to be distorted by the flames, and the ground was burned in the air, leaving a cracked track, as if a sword made of flames shot out from its mouth, piercing the heart of the Ant-Man with a death-threatening sound. Whoosh! In a moment so short that it could almost be ignored, the giant disappeared again. The unparalleled dragon flame flew into the air, piercing through the huge afterimage and disappearing into the sky. Dragon. Wait, where is the person? Such a big person just disappeared. The fighting instinct reminded it that something was wrong. The dragon looked around in horror, and its thick tail swung back and forth, causing a whistling sound of wind. Its head kept turning, and its claws swept with strong winds, as if it was building a defense line, trying to protect the vital parts of its upper body. Dragon flames were also brewing in its mouth, and the flames faintly overflowed from the corners of its mouth, ready to launch a fatal attack as soon as the enemy appeared. But no matter how airtight it defended, how could it defend against a flying ant? Chu Cheng operated the miniature Ant-Man to easily bypass its randomly dancing claws and tail, approached it to almost the distance of its face, and pressed the giantization button again. In the blink of an eye, the Ant-Man doubled rapidly. He maintained the posture of Superman fist, with his fist pointing to the sky, pouring all his strength into this punch, and at the same time, with the help of the momentum of the Pime particles, when they were multiplied, the punch was like a cannon shot into the sky, and it slammed into the dragon's jaw with a loud thunder-like bang. The giant Ant-Man's strength was already at the level of a hanger-on, and coupled with the impact of the Pime particles, when they were gigantic, the giant dragon's eyes went black with one punch, and its mouth suddenly clenched, and a mouthful of dragon fire was swallowed down its throat, and it fell down with its head heavy. Monster! The dragon fell to the ground, almost fainted, and was almost crying. Monster! It's a monster! Chu Cheng was stunned for a moment. Friday. He was a little confused. Did we seem to hear this thing talking just now? Chapter 289 Dragon Language. Friday, was this thing talking just now? Chu Cheng looked at the dragon that was knocked to the ground by Ant-Man and choked with dragon fire, feeling a little uncertain. Although this idea also made him feel a little weird. After all, there were only a few people in the scene on the screen. Excluding the little lolly Leela and the two heroes he controlled, the only one that seemed to be able to talk was this dragon. I think so, sir. Chu Cheng was a little confused after getting a definite answer, but how could it be? I mean, isn't it a dragon? It's the function of Ant-Man's electronic helmet, sir. You should check the hero skill description carefully. Friday smiled. To be honest, Chu Cheng didn't really read it carefully. The skill description in the game is understood by those who understand it, just like the manual of household appliances. 99% of players generally don't read the long and lengthy skill descriptions. The manual is only for reference when you encounter a bug or are unsure about the data such as the damage range of a certain skill. After all, even if you have read the text description, it is actually difficult to understand. It is more effective to try it yourself with pictures. In addition, Chu Cheng's recent schedule was extremely tight, so he only roughly experimented with Ant-Man's main skills in the tutorial mode, figured out the operation mode of each skill and each button, and basically mastered Ant-Man's combat skills. As for those minor non-active skill descriptions, he did not look carefully. Now, after listening to Friday's explanation, Chu Cheng was shocked to find that there was such a bug technology in Ant-Man's inconspicuous passive simultaneous interpretation. The unique black technology developed by Ant-Man in the electric control helmet was originally improved based on the system of mind control of insects that appeared in the movie. After the technology matures, Ant-Man's helmet can translate the language of most intelligent creatures for him. This technology allows him to communicate with some aliens in Marvel who do not speak the same language, although most aliens who come to Earth either speak English or have their own translation ability, and it is even useful in Marvel's microscopic world. In the Ant-Man comics, when they are reduced to the microscopic level, the microscopic world also has an ecosystem. With the help of the Ant-Man helmet, he can even communicate with the language of microscopic intelligent creatures. So why didn't this skill work before? Chu Cheng was suspicious. Obviously the creatures before were not intelligent enough to develop language, sir. Friday explained. Chu Cheng understood. It turned out that the beasts before were too weak, and their intelligence was not high enough, so there was no translation. Just like Ant-Man can control ants, but cannot talk to them like ordinary people, because they have no language to translate. So he had to speak up for Aquaman next door. You always ridicule Aquaman for talking to fish, but to be reasonable, Ant-Man next door actually has the ability to talk to ants. But have you ever cared about these? No, you just want to have fun with Aquaman. In addition, you should also want to know the new scan results of the detective mode. Friday continued. This dragon is not the source of infection. Those mutated beasts have nothing to do with it. Oh. This was a bit unexpected. This guy looks like the boss of this place, and Chu Cheng has already preconceived that it is a culprit of a series of moths. The target suspected of the infection source has found a weak radiation signal coming from the direction where the dragon appeared, deep underground. At this time, the dragon had lost both its fighting spirit and its ability to fight, and was lying on the ground groaning. After finding out its details, Chu Cheng was completely confident that he could subdue it, and he no longer took it to heart. And he found that Ant-Man actually had the ability to communicate with it, so he was even less anxious to kill it. Many questions that followed could be answered from it. Chu Cheng briefly switched to Batman, activated the Allen mode and directly vibrated through the surface and flew down. In a short while, Batman came up with something. A small box-shaped object, about 20 centimeters wide. An unknown structure similar to a mixture of metal and minerals was marked with the characteristics of the infection source in the detective mode, but it was unclear what it was. The groaning dragon caught a glimpse of the little man flying out of the ground with that thing, and was immediately shocked, shouting angrily, "That's mine." No one else understood the dragon language, and they only heard it majestically make a series of unknown sounds, which made people involuntarily feel fearful. But when the giant Ant-Man took a step forward, Brother Long suddenly felt as if his jaw had just been hit by Superman's punch, and was in great pain. He immediately shut up and shrank his head, not daring to move forward. He just continued to shout, "That's mine. Don't move." However, no one paid any attention. Batman held the box-like object in front of Leela. "Do you recognize it?" Leela took it and showed a puzzled expression at first, then gradually became shocked after looking at it for a while. "Isn't it? It shouldn't exist. It's just something fabricated by the Adventists. No one has ever seen it, and we all think it's fake. Do you know what it is?" Batman said, "There is also the Adventists." Leela pondered for a moment and said, "We ancients have never been united. There have been countless factions and branches since ancient times. As I told you, one day the ancient gods will come again, and that will be an inevitable catastrophe for this planet. most of us regard it as a huge disaster, with only a small number of exceptions. The Adventists. Batman said. Yes, it's just as the name suggests. Some ancients believe that our reincarnation is meaningless and that we can't be considered alive, even if we linger on from life to life. But no matter how much time has passed and how much effort we spend, we can't find a solution. This is an unsolvable problem for the ancients, and we feel more and more like zombies day by day. So naturally, some people proposed that our extraordinary qualities all come from gods from outer space, and what we have obtained is just a little bit of their power. If the gods come again, maybe it will bring us an opportunity to change. This is the Advent faction among the ancients. They are not many in number, but very firm, and each of them believes that the advent of the ancient gods is inevitable and will guide us to the next step of evolution. They claim that they have found something in a corner of this planet, which they call the core of Advent, which is the key to guiding the gods to come again. That's it. Batman said. I guess it should be. But I have only heard of it. I have never seen it with my own eyes. I'm not sure. Leela shook her head. I don't know what it is used for, and why it is in the hands of a dragon. As she said that, she looked at the dragon next to her. Brother Long yelled again, that's mine. Robber. Bandit. After cursing, it quickly stole a glance at the giant in red next to it, and shrank its head. Brother Long must be very entangled in his heart now. He was angry that someone came to his door to rob his things. He couldn't relieve his hatred without cursing. He also felt that he was embarrassed as a noble dragon, but he was afraid of being punched if he scolded. This person was too strong, and he couldn't beat him. The punch really hurt. It was really uncomfortable to neither advance nor retreat. It didn't matter if he didn't look at it. He stole a glance and found in horror that the giant in red actually turned his head to look at it and walked towards it. Its dragon body trembled and it shrank back in horror. What are you doing? Don't come over here. Don't come over here. We think we need to have a good talk. Ant-Man said, the friendly kind. Chu Cheng used Ant-Man's body to speak on the microphone, but the built-in translation function of the electronically controlled helmet was activated, and the sound coming from the helmet speaker was automatically translated into the target language. Therefore, to a third person, it sounded similar to the voice of the dragon opposite, a strange sound with unclear pronunciation and meaning. When he spoke, Leela and the 9 agents in the room widened their eyes again, and their eyes fell on this giant man. Wait, you can speak dragon language? Chapter 290 Advent Core. Everyone was shocked to hear the Ant-Man speaking dragon language. Leela was also in disbelief, thinking that she, an ancient with so many lifetimes of memory, couldn't understand dragon language. How did you know? The dragon was even more surprised. Then, I don't know if its brain was not working well, or it was a little dizzy from the beating just now, but it asked stupidly, are you a dragon too? No, of course I'm not. Ant-Man said that he had shrunk back to normal size. Although he can grow to giant size, doing so consumes much more energy than usual, and can't be maintained for too long. In the movie Ant-Man 2, the control of Ant-Man's suit failed, and it was difficult to restore the giant state, and he almost suffocated to death due to lack of oxygen. In the game skills, it may be for the purpose of restoration, and giantization is set as the ultimate skill. Ant-Man in the giant state will have a pressure bar, which will slowly increase as the giantization time goes by. When it reaches a certain level, it will be forced to cancel and return to normal size. Once the size is restored, the pressure bar will slowly decrease again. The smaller the progress bar of this bar, the longer it will take for him to transform into a giant man. At this time, Ant-Man turned back to his normal size and opened his arms. As you can see, I'm just an ordinary human. I have a few questions for you. Dragon. Redafine ordinary human. Thinking of this, it seemed to feel the pain in its jaw after being punched. But after seeing the opponent's ability, it no longer dared to act recklessly. It looked at the Advent Core in Batman's hand with resentment, and said vaguely, what do you want to know? Start with that. He gestured to the small box. What is that? I don't know. Dragon shook his head. It's something left by outsiders. But it's mine. I have to lock it, and keep an eye on it, otherwise it will be a disaster. Why? Ant-Man asked. I don't know. Everyone says so. Everyone. "Do you mean other dragons?" Ant-Man asked. "Are there other dragons? Where are they?" "Dead. They died a long time ago." Dragon continued to shake his head. For some reason, the oppression of the majestic mythical creature when this guy first appeared had long disappeared in Chu Cheng's eyes. Listening to the voice translated by the electronic helmet, and the way it sat on the ground with its legs stretched out, and its head shaking, it always felt that it was not very smart. Chu Cheng also immediately thought of what Leela said about the dragon race being extinct. But Leela only heard the group of ancients say so, which was the result of the ancient observation and exploration of the ancient race. As for how the dragons became extinct, no one knew. What happened? The outsiders are back. The dragon said, "We resisted, but we were defeated. They thought we were a threat, so they killed us all." Chu Cheng was slightly shocked. He remembered Leela saying that the gods would always return to the planets they had been to sooner or later. Maybe this is not in the future tense, maybe it has even happened in the past. They came back once, discovered a species called dragons, judged it as a threatening race, and then wiped it out. "But you are still alive," Ant-Man said. "Of course, I wasn't born then." The dragon said vaguely, "I was still an egg then. Many years passed, and I didn't know how I woke up. When I woke up, everyone was dead, and I was the only one left. But they left me some memories, some voices in my head. They said that the thing that destroyed us will come back, and that this small box will be the key, and we must take good care of it no matter what. Speaking of it, it got angry again. That's mine." Chu Cheng asked a few more questions through Ant-Man, but felt that the dragon's thinking was unclear. Sometimes the answers were upside down and irrelevant, and it took a long time to explain a question. For a while, he even felt that he was not asking a mythical creature, but lecturing a low-grade elementary school student. But he roughly figured out some things. Those infected beasts and mutated monsters were not done by it, but by this thing, called Descendant Core by the ancients. The ancients rumored that dragons would infect lower creatures, causing them to mutate and become violent. Maybe that was actually the fault of this thing. Although it is unknown what the connection between this thing and the return of the gods from outer space is, it is certain that this may be the most dangerous source of infection that humans have unearthed so far. However, its current effectiveness seems to be only effective for low intelligence creatures, and has little effect on humans. Chu Cheng simply used the on-site equipment to simply calculate the infection level of this thing, and the results surprised him. It is indeed more exaggerated than all the infected objects in the database of the entire Special Service 9 department. If it is not controlled, it is possible that the infection range will cover all kinds of animals in the entire Earth pole star within 10 days and a half. And such a terrible thing has been sleeping on this planet for endless years, but it has never caused a disaster, and has only been discovered today. The most important reason is because of this place. A space that seems to be isolated from the world, a paradise-like area. This is indeed not naturally formed. This is a space opened up by the ancient dragon clan many years ago, specially built to seal and suppress the power of this artifact. Its existence itself is a disaster. It can cause wild beasts to mutate and go crazy, and in a very short time, it can turn an entire planet into a hell on Earth, where ferocious beasts are rampant, and no creature can live and develop. It cannot be destroyed, nor can it be abandoned casually, so the ancient dragon clan created this special domain to isolate it from the influence of the outside world. And the not so smart guy that Chu Cheng and others saw at this time, the last dragon in the world, is the gatekeeper of this domain. The inherited memory and the instinct branded in its body have allowed it to guard here for many years, preventing ignorant humans from digging here one day and taking this destructive artifact to the outside world, and also guarding against the return of foreign gods one day. Dragons are proud creatures, and they have always regarded themselves as superior. Mortals regard them as divine beasts, and they themselves think so they naturally feel that they have the responsibility to take care of those inferior races that are weaker than themselves. So even when they were on the verge of extinction, they still created this secluded place for future generations to suppress the disaster. Otherwise, humans and all living things on the Earth pole star might not have developed to this point today. The entire planet has long been affected by this super infection source, and turned into a kind of apocalyptic wasteland. From this perspective alone, this extinct race is indeed worthy of respect from other living beings that have survived to this day. At the same time, Chu Cheng also realized another problem revealed during this period. The dragon said that the Advent Core has been here for a long time. It seems that it has no sense of time, but Chu Cheng estimates that it must be a very long time. For such a long time, the Advent Core has been sealed here and nothing has happened. But just now, in the past 2 days, animals affected by it seem to have begun to appear near Jiangdu. This is not a good sign. Either the sealing effect of this field has weakened, or the power of the Advent Core has become stronger. But if he had to guess, it might mean something even worse. They are coming. If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelos. There you'll find the original version of this story and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 291. The road is still long. Chu Cheng was also very happy that the conversation ended friendly with a consensus between the two sides. Obviously, the dragons played a vital role in the blockade of the strongest source of infection in history. Although I don't understand the working principle of dragon power and how the blockade is achieved, this worldly realm works well, and humans are not sure that they can control it better. So of course, before finding a better way to deal with it, the Advent Core was left to this silly dragon, and is still sealed in this realm, to prevent the situation from getting worse. After the negotiation, it was found that the dragon was unexpectedly friendly. After returning the small box to it, the stupid dragon immediately became happy, and it seemed that he was ready to become brothers with several invaders. Of course, Chu Cheng estimated that it must be related to the size of Ant-Man's fist, but it is also a fact that the dragon is not very smart. He estimated that this dragon might really be a child among his own kind in terms of physiological cycle, so he was simple-minded and knew everything about the problem, although his articulation needed to be improved. This is a good thing, which is convenient for establishing a good cooperative relationship and for the subsequent work. Yes, of course there must be follow-up work. Although the Advent Core has been well sealed under the care of this dragon for many years, it is now obvious that there are signs of small leaks. The 9th Special Service will then set up a camp at the entrance of the domain, or may also consider simply building a long-term base. Humans need to use existing technical means to reinforce the seal and prevent the leakage of infection. At the same time, they must step up research to determine what this core is. The main problem is uncertainty. No one knows how this thing works and what impact it will have on the advent of the gods in the future. It is precisely because of this that it is not easy to act rashly. We can only maintain the status quo while studying, otherwise we may just throw it into outer space. This incident has come to an end for the time being. After the 9th camp took over the domain, Batman and Ant-Man both withdrew, and Chu Cheng temporarily exited the game and returned to the main interface. He found the Ant-Man part in the technical module, entered the keyword and searched, and the corresponding translation technology really popped up. One of the countless great inventions of scientist Hank Pym in his life. Even when he shrunk to the subatomic level and entered the microscopic world, he could communicate with the intelligent creatures living in the microscopic world without any obstacles. It can be said that it has reached the pinnacle in the field of translation. On Friday, add simultaneous translation to the subsequent technical development, make time in the schedule, and arrange for Dr. Hank Pym to be in charge personally. Chu Cheng said. It's already being done. Chu Cheng quickly realized that this translation technology might still be very critical, especially since they might deal with aliens in the future. If the language can be mutually understood, it will be of great benefit in both communication and negotiation, and spying on intelligence. Then there is another major gain from this trip, that is, the next upgrade is ushered in. However, in fact, most of the experience bar of this upgrade was contributed by the scientific research. At this point, his experience bar at each level is as thick as the face of the boiled egg next door. It is clear that he is now in many cities and slaying monsters at the same time. The experience is coming in many times faster than in the early days, but it still seems a bit of a drop in the bucket when it is put into such a long experience bar. So it turns out that experience upgrades still rely on life skills. The scientific research heroes work in the laboratory 24 hours a day and take turns to provide him with a lot of experience every day. Otherwise, it would take a long time to upgrade by killing monsters. First of all, it is time to extract skills. There are still 5 skills, and this time the first choice is naturally given to Thor. First of all, Thor is the strongest hero in the pool, and from this perspective, he is the best choice. Thor is the big daddy of the Avengers in all aspects from attributes to skills. It is no exaggeration to say that any skill from him is not Solomon's wisdom. In addition, Chu Cheng's current abilities are mostly on the technology side, and he lacks resistance to metaphysics. And Thor is a magic leader. Although the spells he is good at are mostly swinging a hammer to smash, at least he has high resistance to human and demon, which Chu Cheng still needs. After this skill extraction, it really hit the target, and it was quite accurate, and directly produced Thor's enhanced physique. Invulnerable to swords and guns, almost any weapon known to Earthstar is difficult to penetrate, which is Chu Cheng's strongest physical enhancement skill. And more importantly, he has super strong magic resistance. Considering that the outer gods he needs to face in the future are really relatives of Mr. K from another world, he may really need this magic resistance. Chu Cheng is currently equipped with Wolverine's physical skill, which is also powerful, but not in the same direction as Thor. Uncle Wolf's physical strength is that he can recover infinite blood, while Thor's recovery is relatively weak, but it is almost impossible to break the defense. So he changed the current main equipment defense skill to Thor's physical skill, and in case of injury and blood loss, he can temporarily switch to Wolverine's self-healing, and then switch back after full blood is restored. Most of the remaining skills are nothing to say. There are 2 more shooting and lurking stealth skills, and then there is a silk spinning skill from Spider-Man. This surprised Chu Cheng a little. As far as he knows, only the Spider-Man in the old trilogy movie can directly spit silk without equipment, and all other versions of Spider-Man need to rely on technological equipment. But after checking the instructions, he found that it was not the case. In the original main world, Spider-Man also had the ability to shoot spider silk directly from his wrist at his peak, but he usually didn't do so and only used it for emergencies. It is well known that consuming this essence too frequently is not good for the body, and the same is true for Spider-Man. After all, shooting spider silk will consume the storage in his body. With Spider-Man's high-intensity silk spinning volume that he never restrains every day, it is inevitable that it will affect his body. Moreover, he only has a few simple modes to shoot spider silk directly from his wrist, which is far less than the high-tech spider webs developed later. With the help of the silk spinning device, not only can physical energy be saved, but also combat power can be improved. Therefore, although Spider-Man can do it, he doesn't usually spin silk with his bare hands. Chu Cheng tested it on the equipment, and he didn't feel any consumption when shooting a few spider silks. I think it will only react when the amount is large enough. Then it seems that it can only be fired from the wrist, and not from other parts of the body. This is right, otherwise it will become a bad guidance. This reminded Chu Cheng of the little boy he saw in the jokes back then. One day, he was surprised that he could shoot unidentified objects that looked like spider silk like Spider-Man. Although the parts were not quite the same, it did not arouse his suspicion. So at the school's art performance, when the teacher asked the students if they had any talent to show, the little boy jumped up and said excitedly, "Yes, I want to perform a show called I'm Spider-Man." He didn't know what happened later, but he thought the scene must have been very embarrassing. After the skills were drawn, Chu Cheng checked all the current equipment skills, and felt that his current state was mainly like an enhanced version of Spider-Man. Climbing walls, spider sense, spinning silk, and then with Thor's physical fitness and Cassandra's fighting skills, even if he didn't rely on armor, he felt that he was almost unparalleled in the world on the Earthstar. Of course, there is still a long way to go, and he can't get excited, no matter how excited he is. In particular, various signs indicate that more dangerous enemies are imminent, whether it is his own strength or his hero's strength, or the defense system of the entire Earthstar, all need to be improved, and he must hurry up. It's a pity that he has a lot of scientific research experience but no points. The points he accumulated a while ago just released Ant-Man, and now he hasn't accumulated many points, so he has to wait for the new hero he coveted. In addition, the main function of the upgrade is still to expand the number of people in the team. The substitute pool and the number of people who can fight at the same time have been further improved. Now he can take up to 7 heroes to fight at the same time, and the number of people who can be dispatched at the same time has reached 5. This seems to have reached the number of people when the first generation of Avengers was formed. Historically, when the Avengers first appeared, there were 5 members, namely Iron Man, Thor, Hulk, Ant-Man and Wasp. It's a pity that there is no Hulk and Wasp now. Otherwise, based on the experience summarized by Chu Cheng from this game, it feels that if such an epoch-making historical team as the first generation of Avengers can be assembled, the team buff gain effect should be particularly powerful. At the same time, elsewhere, Kuroto, a big man in the former criminal world, is now walking in an unknown pipeline space with his only remaining team of trusted subordinates. It was pitch black all around, and the only light source was the flashlights of this team. We never work for others. Hei Tong said to someone coldly, if it weren't for the special situation now, those masked lunatics pushed too hard, we wouldn't give in. But even so, your gang had better be as extraordinary as you say. Gang? Someone in the dark laughed strangely. Who said we are a gang? With the help of the flashlight of the smartphone, Hei Tong barely saw the man's appearance, and his heart trembled. You are? The man didn't care, walked forward and chuckled. You come here to offer your loyalty to God. The Great Lord has been waiting for too long, and today that time is finally coming. We will get the crucial key for the Great Lord, the Advent Core. Chapter 292 Spy. Dragon Ruins, the camp of the 9th Special Service. After Batman left, the 9th Special Service quickly went down to this otherworldly realm and set up a camp. Because Ant-Man had already greeted the stupid dragon in the realm in advance, the dragon did not have any special reaction to the entry and exit of these humans, and even helped to restrain some other creatures in the space. As the only dragon, it has long been the leader of these small creatures. Although some ferocious beast tribes are fierce by nature, they are also very afraid of Brother Long. Brother Long said that these new humans are all under his protection, so naturally no younger brother dared to think of trouble. Therefore, the establishment of the camp was relatively smooth. A super infection source that has been passed down since ancient times is suspected to be inextricably linked to the upcoming gods from outer space. As soon as the news came out, the matter naturally became the top priority of the entire Earth Star. A large number of experts were invited from all over the world to stay in the camp for a long time for a search. Miyazaki flew down from the mothership in a hurry, bringing his luggage with him, as if he had planned to take root here. It was also because Ant-Man had done a friendly job on the Dragon Clan's thoughts before that the other party reluctantly agreed to hand over the Advent Core under its care to the stationed humans for research purposes. But the premise is that they cannot leave the camp, cannot go beyond the restricted area, and cannot leave this domain space. So Miyazaki and his scientific research delegation got the super infection sources they wished, and immediately used all the equipment they had on hand to conduct a deep scan of the thing, hoping to strip it naked. Of course, the protective measures were not forgotten. No one ignored the fact that this small box was a super infection source that could bring about a global disaster, so the priority of its control and protection work was especially before a search. Professor Miyazaki and his think tank quickly came up with a plan. A layer of protective fence, like a city wall, surrounds the entire ruins from the outside. When Professor Miyazaki spoke, the camp base was projecting the architectural structure he designed with light blue laser light. He saw a 3-dimensional transparent wall floating in front of him, with various complex equipment and structures built in. It was also one of the innovative technologies brought by Stark, a stereoscopic projection technology that could be projected anywhere in the room. And the user interaction was extremely convenient. No matter where you were in the room, you could just swipe and a floating screen would be swiped down immediately. It was extremely convenient for both office and scientific research. The senior management of the 9th department had gradually adapted to the use of these convenient devices, and now they were being popularized among the lower level clerks, which could greatly improve work efficiency. I once built a small scale, 4x4 meter containment box, specifically for containing high-risk infected objects. Professor Miyazaki said, now we just need to enlarge its volume and build a version that is hundreds of times larger. An extra large containment box to put the entire dragon ruins in it. Combined with the effect of the ruins, it should be able to further curb its leakage. But we are all watching it now, sharing a room at close range. A scientist looked at the Advent core placed on the table next to Professor Miyazaki and said anxiously, and you just said that this is the most dangerous source of infection in history. So won't we? Crazy? Don't worry, of course not. Professor Miyazaki vowed, you are absolutely safe. This is not the same source of infection we have encountered before. It is only effective against creatures with lower intelligence. Humans are immune to it, not to mention that those of us here have the top brains among humans, right? There was a laugh in the think tank. Okay, then the next step is to study the source of infection. I believe everyone knows that it is related to the major threat we are about to face, so now let's get into the state as soon as possible. The think tank was holding a meeting inside, and people were still coming and going in the camp outside. At this time, the base had just been temporarily established, and many facilities had not yet been built. From time to time, vehicles would pull materials and heavy equipment in from the outside, and people would come and go in the camp, and everyone was busy. Point, this thing is really heavy. A team of agents deployed a heavy equipment near the center, and everyone was sweating profusely from exhaustion. Remind me again what it does? To detect infected people and prevent unclean guys from sneaking in. It's Professor Miyazaki's new invention. Check if this thing is working properly. This is my first time using it. Don't worry, assemble it exactly according to the instructions. Look, the indicator light is on. If an infected person is found, it will alarm, and the display next to it shows the reading. Several agents discussed, and no one noticed, that one of the teammates who had just deployed the equipment with them had quietly retreated and turned away without saying a word while they were talking. No one noticed, but there was indeed a spy here. If you want to sneak into this place, it is undoubtedly the best time to do it when it has just been set up and is still in the construction stage. The spy just seized such an opportunity and wore a uniform of the 9 uniforms, a helmet and goggles. In this way, the face is mostly covered under the full armor. If it is not very familiar, or even teammates on the same team will find it difficult to discover that a stranger has sneaked in. In addition, the current camp system has not been fully built, and the temporary lighting equipment used has a mediocre light effect, making it even more difficult to notice him for a while. The spy has a clear target. He took advantage of the fact that no one was paying attention to him and wandered to the barracks where the think tank was located. He casually walked in with some spare parts and tools in his arms. At this time, other staff members were responsible for connecting lines and arranging equipment in the barracks. He was holding tools in his hands, so he looked like one of them and did not attract attention for a while. The spy stopped at the door, pretending to face the side, but actually pointed the pinhole camera installed on the shoulder strap of his arm in the direction of the think tank. He took a few photos of the floating screen when Professor Miyazaki was talking about the fortifications, and found an opportunity to take a few photos of the Advent core on the table. Of course, it is impossible to steal it, and the spy knew this very well. If there were only special agents from the Special Service 9, even if there were many people, it would not be impossible to find a way. But there is also a dragon here. The dragon would never allow anyone to take the Advent core out of here. You don't want to provoke an angry dragon. But he got enough on this trip. He saw the internal layout, confirmed the existence of the Advent core with his own eyes, and heard Professor Miyazaki's ideas about fortifications, which may be very important. The spy remained calm, pretending to put down the tools in his hands, turned around and walked out of the barracks, as if nothing had happened. There were fewer and fewer agents passing by the exit. Just as he was about to escape successfully, a shadow suddenly flashed from the side and bumped into his shoulder. "Oh, sorry, buddy, I didn't look at the road," the man said. "It's okay." The spy didn't want to cause trouble, so he dealt with it casually and prepared to continue walking towards the exit without even looking. But as soon as he took a step, he felt his wrist tightened, as if it was held by a strong force. He turned his head and saw that Agent Luo Yajin of the 9th Special Service Department had his 5 fingers firmly clasped on his wrist and said with a smile, "Don't be so anxious to leave, buddy. I don't think I have seen you much." Chapter 293 Playing with the Scepter. Seeing that he was only one step away from the exit, he thought that this stealth was successful, but unexpectedly, Luo Yajin suddenly appeared at the last checkpoint. The spy's heart sank, and his eyes swept from Luo Yajin to the exit next to him. The distance and the time required to break through the exit quickly flashed through his mind, and he immediately decided on a plan. Breakthrough by force. Batman and his magical allies withdrew from the camp, so the only thing he was afraid of in this whole place was the dragon behind him. But he expected that the dragon only cared about guarding the small box called the Advent Core, and probably wouldn't care about the internal struggles of humans. So as long as he didn't touch the Advent Core, the dragon would probably not be dispatched. As for the other people in the 9th Special Service, even those ace agents who were called the Ultimate Power, he didn't care about them now. Because now he has power. Not something like the infected or the phantom, but a blessing from God, something that allows him to be separated from mortals. The moment he made up his mind, the spy's wrist that was held was suddenly pulled free, and his other hand used a back fist to hit him in the face. The back fist is the fastest and most sudden punch in Jeet Kune Do. It is often launched suddenly when nothing happened. The biggest feature is that the punch is fast and unexpected. It is often launched when both parties have not yet embraced each other. The punch is fast and without warning, which has a sense of unethical. Luo Yajin had already grabbed the opponent's wrist first, but he did not expect that the opponent's hand would burst out with such amazing brute force. It was pulled out of his hand suddenly, and the back fist hit him unexpectedly in the moment of surprise and shock. This punch brought about a violent cyclone, and he knew intuitively that the power of this punch must not be the level of an ordinary human. He instinctively raised his arm to protect his face, and his arm hastily changed into the form of a shield. When he raised it, the punch hit the shield fiercely, and the force penetrated through the shield, shaking his whole body out, and rolling several times. Fortunately, Luo Yajin had acquired his abilities for quite some time, and he had mastered them quite well. The changes of weapons such as blades, guns, and shields that he usually used were almost imprinted in his DNA, and they were basically instinctive and did not need to be thought about. Otherwise, he would not have been able to use his abilities in this critical moment. When Luo Yajin raised his head, his face was already solemn. "You are the Phantom." But he immediately realized that something was wrong. The newly developed equipment of Professor Miyazaki had been set up in the center of the camp. The old thief swore that if an unauthorized guy, whether it was a phantom or an infected person, stepped into the camp, the thing would scream louder than the morning exercise horn. But now that people were riding on his face, the broken equipment was still silent. I'm afraid it was made of paper like the radar in their graves. Or, could it be something else? Phantom? Oh, how can a saint chosen by God be compared with such an inferior thing? The spy snorted arrogantly and rushed forward again. It's not a phantom? Then what's the matter with this strange power? Luo Yajin didn't have time to think about it and immediately stood up to meet the enemy. When he stood up again, his hand had changed from a shield to a pistol. He also considered that the distance between the two sides was too close and the long gun could not be used. The pistol was a better option in a close-range gunfight. But he didn't expect the opponent to move so fast that he almost rushed to his face before he stood up straight. Luo Yajin raised his gun and fired without thinking, but the opponent had already slapped the muzzle of the gun with a reverse knife. There was a crisp gunshot, and the bullet flew diagonally into the air. Luo Yajin reacted quickly, and his free left hand had turned into a sharp blade, waving his arm to wipe his neck. The spy leaned back and dodged, and Luo Yajin swung his arm in the air and abruptly stopped, returning along the original path and swiping back. But the spy seemed to have seen through this move, and with his right arm, this blocking action not only cleverly resolved Luo Yajin's counterattack, but also created a big flaw on the left side of Agent Luo's body. The spy's uppercut hit the exposed ribs of his defense line, and the punch burst out. Luo Yajin seemed to hear the scream of his own broken ribs. His body slid backwards uncontrollably after receiving this amazing punch, and he tripped and fell on his back. When he landed, the inertia had not yet been digested, and his body continued to slide backwards, as if it was equipped with pulleys. Liu Yajin was shocked by the opponent's amazing speed and strange power, but his hands did not stop. He was hit, but continued to fight back. His hands clasped together and turned into a grenade launcher. His body slid backwards against the ground under the inertia of the impact, and the muzzle had locked onto the enemy. With a bang, a grenade hit his face. However, in the split second before the grenade was fired, he saw clearly with wide eyes that a faint stream of light condensed in the spy's hand and turned into a long object, like a long staff, but with a strange appearance, and a few vine-like things coiled on the tip. The strange shape exuded an ominous aura. The spy pointed the staff-like weapon forward, and a burst of energy was immediately stimulated by the tip. The strange and eerie light collided with the grenade head-on, and the grenade exploded in the air. There was a deafening explosion, and the flames shot up into the sky like a sword out of its sheath. But then a domineering invisible cyclone was released, blowing away the flames in an instant. The man opposite stood between the dissipated sparks with a long staff in his hand, and the flames rolled from his body to the surroundings. For a moment, he looked like a god descending from heaven, and his power was unstoppable. If no one noticed such a big commotion, then these 9 places could not even be called a lunatic asylum, and they could just be called the center for the deaf and dumb. A group of agents had already approached with weapons, but they hadn't figured out the situation yet. Wait. Liu Yajin fell to the ground and shouted with difficulty, "Don't come over." But before Liu Yajin could finish his words, the spy's mouth curled up into a strange smile. The spy turned around and swept his long staff behind him like a sweeping army, and the strange energy was stimulated from the staff again. There was a burst of explosions, and the explosions were connected, like a crescent on the ground. The domineering shock wave blew the 9 agents who tried to move forward from a distance. Where did this monster come from? Liu Yajin gritted his teeth, supported his knees, and wanted to get up to fight again, but he saw that the man had turned around again, and the deadly and dangerous long staff was pointing straight at him. Liu Yajin's breathing stagnated. The energy was stirred again, and the spy had a somewhat contemptuous smile on his face, and a deadly beam of light poured out from the long staff. For a moment, Liu Yajin really thought he was going to die, until a blue figure flashed out from nowhere and landed right in front of him. Captain America. Captain America suddenly flashed out and shrank behind the vibranium shield. The energy on the long staff hit the shield head-on and radiated in the fan-shaped area in the opposite direction. The spy was shocked and fell on his back by the energy reflected by himself. "You?" Liu Yajin was surprised. "Where did you come from?" Needless to say, Captain America here was naturally sent by Chu Cheng to station here. Just kidding. The most dangerous source of infection in history, and there is a dragon here. He can't really rely on the lunatic asylum for security, right? Of course, he also paid attention to the movement in the camp. At this moment, 2 invisible drones were floating in the sky. In fact, Liu Yajin had been spotted by the drone when he just started fighting with the spy. It's just that the spy didn't show his strength at that time, and the agents of the 9th Department might not be able to handle it. Therefore, although the incident was marked, it was only listed by Friday in the list of pending matters with a relatively low priority. It was not until the spy showed his power and the resident agents clearly seemed unable to handle it that she raised the priority of the incident and immediately informed Chu Cheng. So Chu Cheng immediately got on Captain America's vest to see the situation. Captain America looked at the spy who fell to the ground after being rebounded by his precision shield and said, "You know, I have fought with a guy who played with a scepter before. He called himself a god, but in the end, let's just say you don't want to take him as an example." Chapter 294. I second myself. The spy knocked down Agent Liu with 2 moves and shocked all the agents. He saw that the dragon in the ruins did not seem to have any intention of interfering. He was relieved and thought that he could run away. He never expected that a political commissar holding a horse girdle would suddenly block his way and blow him to pieces with a bullet. The spy was shocked and fell on his back. When he got up, his expression was no longer as relaxed as before. They had investigated the superheroes who had appeared in the past. Although they didn't know how detailed they were, they had a general idea of the abilities and skills of each of those heroes. Although he didn't know the name of Captain America, he had an impression of him. If it was just Captain America, he wouldn't take it too seriously, thinking that he could deal with it with his current strength. The only thing he was afraid of was that there were too many unreasonable and cheating superheroes. If they got a heavyweight helper like Iron Man and Thor who had appeared before, he could give up resistance and die. But after looking up and observing for a moment, the spy found that there seemed to be only one soldier. He felt a little relieved. He thought that he could not fight against those flying gods. Could it be that I could not defeat you? As long as he broke through the sky, he could get out. When he made up his mind, the spy rolled on the spot, jumped up, and thrust his staff towards Captain America's face. Captain America swung his vibranium shield and pushed the staff aside with a sound. But the weapon seemed to be alive. The spy did not need to withdraw his strength. Instead, it directly raised up along an arc and hit Captain America's side again. The effect of the picture did not look like the spy was controlling the staff. Instead, it looked like the weapon was dragging the owner's hands to automatically counterattack. In this way, his moves were completely out of routine. The strength and energy seemed to be stimulated from the staff. Without the force process, the moves were particularly fast. The spy was sure that this move would be a surprise victory. He infused the long staff with powerful energy, and the eerie and strange coiled vines stimulated huge energy and hit the gap in Captain America's defense line. But Chu Ching has been through hundreds of battles since he started playing this game. What kind of monsters has he not fought? His combat experience and reaction speed have long been considered to be at a monster level among game players, and he pressed the defense button almost semi-predictively. So Captain America shrank back and gained time by keeping a distance from the long staff. He took the opportunity to turn the shield around with an extremely extreme move to protect his head and face. The spy infused the staff with all his strength and hit the shield hard. The majestic and strange energy poured out, shaking the vibranium shield with a loud hum. However, whether it is based on the power supply or the original performance, it can be known that Captain America's vibranium shield is not a magical artifact that ordinary people dare to touch casually. Although it is classified as vibranium, it is actually better than the universal vibranium of Black Panther. Normally it can absorb energy to offset impacts and release energy to rebound when needed. From the small things, like Captain America's soldiers being knocked down by rebounding bullets in the movie, to Loki being bounced away by his own scepter in Avengers 1, and even Thor being bounced away by his own Thor's power. If you really count the things that this thing has bounced off, you will be shocked. So sometimes this thing can absorb impacts, sometimes it can reflect, and sometimes it even has an additional damage increasing effect. Chu Cheng doesn't know what special skills Captain America has in the movie. After all, it's just a round shield, and it doesn't look like there is a gear switch button, but it is reflected in his game operation as the classic shield counter mechanism of action games. When Chu Cheng is operating Captain America, if he keeps pressing the defense button, Captain America will block with his shield. If he seizes the opportunity to click defense at the moment when the opponent attacks, if the timing is good enough, the shield counter mechanism will be triggered, and the enemy's attack will be rebounded intact with the extraordinary performance of vibranium. The spy had already calculated that this full strength attack would kill the shield wielding soldier instantly, and was ready to flee as soon as he succeeded. Without any preparation, the full strength attack from him had already swept back to him like a tidal wave, and a shield counterattack blew him upside down, and the long staff in his hand flew out of his hand. Even when he landed and started rolling, the spy was still confused. Was he killed instantly? Was he blocked by this funny character dressed like a circus clown holding a pot lid? No, this energy, this touch, why does it feel like I was killed instantly by myself? I killed myself? Question mark? Spy? Captain America took a step sideways, stretched out his arm, and took the long staff in his hand. But before he could check what was wrong with this strange weapon, he saw that the staff actually rippled in his hand and emitted light. A moment later, it exploded with a snap and disappeared from his palm. At this time, the spy had finished rolling, but he did not stand up. Instead, he knelt on the ground and looked down at his hands. His face was full of disbelief. The previous brilliance in his eyes had disappeared and was replaced by doubts about life and astonishment, as if all thoughts had been extinguished. No, I haven't lost yet. I can still fight. God, why do you want to take back my power? Luo Yajin walked up to Captain America with his injured arm. What's going on? I don't know. I haven't seen it. Chu Cheng responded casually and controlled Captain America to walk up to the man. The spy sighed softly and didn't even have the intention of standing up to resist. He just said, well, if you think I have failed, if you think so, then I will accept it calmly. Who are you talking to? Chu Cheng said, who do you work for? The spy looked up, met Captain America's bright and energetic eyes, and suddenly laughed out loud. Heh. He chuckled. You are all looking beyond the sky. You are worried that maybe tomorrow a disaster will come, and the gods will descend from the sky, but you ignore that the gods may have already come. Chu Cheng narrowed his eyes. What do you mean? But the man just smiled strangely and lowered his head, as if he had made up his mind to keep silent, no matter what the other party asked. Don't worry, he will tell you. Luo Yajin stepped forward. We are still good at getting people to talk, and these guys will talk in the end. It seems that this time it won't work. Captain America said. What? Luo Yajin looked at the man again, and his pupils couldn't help but shrink slightly. He saw that man kneeling on the ground, and strange golden flames suddenly jumped out of his body. He just knelt there, closed his eyes lightly, motionless, as if he had no sense of touch. The golden flames engulfed his whole body in just a dozen seconds, burning him clean from head to toe, leaving no ash. Luo Yajin watched him burn, and was silent for a moment, then asked, what do you think? Who knows? But do you want me to make a random guess? Captain America said in a deep voice. We may have to fight. Elsewhere. Someone opened his eyes. He failed. What happened? Someone else asked. A superhero. They call themselves one of the Avengers. Someone said, he was intercepted and defeated. A saint given by God. Can't even escape unscathed from a so-called Avenger. He underestimated the enemy and wasted God's blessing. The man shook his head, so he lost his qualifications. All of us who are left should also take this as a warning. What a pity. He was originally a good warrior. Yes, but he is not irreplaceable. The last voice came from above, a being who had been silent all along. A sturdy human-shaped shadow appeared, with a pair of dark green eyes dotted on his face without facial features. Soon, the time of God's descent will come. I, the messenger of the great Lord God, will personally open the door of descent. Chapter 295 Iron Man 6. 2 days ago. I'm sorry, Mr. Stark, but I may have missed the point a little bit. The members of the Star Technology Committee sat around the table. Dr. Hines, who was sitting in the middle, rubbed his nose and looked at Tony Stark, or more accurately, the holographic projection, in front of him with some uncertainty. Although it seemed that it was indeed Stark himself, no different from the real person, they all knew clearly that what they saw was just a projection. If it was not necessary, Stark would rarely come out in person to meet them now. Whether in the eyes of the committee or the top management, they felt that Stark must have held an important position in the alliance. In their imagination, Iron Man should be a big shot who was always busy with various decision-making matters. Of course, that was just their imagination. The reason why Stark was getting busier and busier and had no time to get away was not because he was busy commanding, but because he was busy working overtime. There is no way. He is the most powerful scientific leader in Chu Cheng's hands. The most important scientific research and development are basically handed over to him. Therefore, Chu Cheng almost lets him stay in the laboratory 24 hours a day. Only occasionally when Stark needs to issue a notice of diplomacy, he can arrange other tasks for him. This may be the legendary Feng Shu. The most famous capital tycoon in the American comics circle has now become the most exploited worker in Chu Cheng's hands. Fortunately, he is a virtual game character instead of a real person. Otherwise, according to the intensity of work without sleep, rest, eating and drinking, even an Iron Man would be exhausted. Are you saying that you plan to build a satellite? Dr. Hines asked tentatively. A defense hub powered by a super large arc reactor. Well, you can think of it as a satellite. Stark said, it should be the same thing for you. It is set up in low Earth orbit and can undertake most of the functions of your current satellite system. It can replace the existing communication system and is more stable and efficient than your existing satellite signal transmission. More importantly, it has the function of deep space detection that your current equipment does not have. It is equipped with an ultra-long-range radar for aliens. I believe I don't need to explain the importance of this function, right? Everyone in the Star Technology Committee looked at each other. Although no one spoke, everyone understood. Indeed. Especially now that the thing called Advent Core appeared, and it was rumored that someone planned to steal that thing. The alien enemy has become the absolute primary trouble for this planet. Any equipment that can take countermeasures against alien visitors is what they need to support unconditionally now. But Chu Ching hadn't finished speaking. The space station he planned to deploy was not only a satellite, but also a weapon and armory. The Justice League Watchtower in the original work has a super weapon that can strike planets from orbit, but his Watchtower is not equipped with it. But it doesn't matter, he found similar technology in Iron Man's technical module. Stark's orbital weapon, the remote-controlled artificial intelligence codenamed Lucy, can also inflict devastating energy strikes on any object on the surface from planetary orbit. Driven by the super-large arc reactor in the space station, the energy output far exceeds any set of Iron Man armor and can instantly melt an entire military base into molten iron. In addition, Chu Cheng also plans to deploy another key weapon on the space station, which is called Iron Man 6. As mentioned before, the latest Iron Man he shipped according to the movie armor sequence is only Mark 43, but there are some Iron Man equipment in the comics, and the technical module has a variety of Iron Man related technologies. Among them is this project called Iron Man 6. The design of Tony Stark from the parallel universe numbered 1610 is, as the name suggests, the 6th generation of Iron Man suits created by Stark in this universe. But unlike the main world, the 6th generation suit is not a traditional close-fitting Iron Man armor, but a super air combat mecha. A super large floating Iron Man equipment comparable in size to the SHIELD floating carrier, driven by an oversized reactor in the center, and all important parts of the body have independent reactors for energy supply. Rather than saying it is an Iron Man armor, it is better to say that it is a floating military fortress that looks like Iron Man. It is fully armed to the teeth. When it fires all the bullets, the scene is like a world-famous painting of the Assault on Freedom's colorful cannon. Unlike the usual Iron Man armor for single-soldier combat, Iron Man number 6 is designed by Stark for war. He was full of force when he first appeared. He swept through an entire mecha army alone, and swept through thousands of troops. Of course, this thing has a long research and development cycle and huge cost investment, so it is not easy to build. And looking at the size and combat method, you can tell that it is dedicated to the front battlefield, and it is completely useless for dealing with superpowers and catching phantoms. So considering the severe situation of the outer space war that may be faced in the future, Chu Cheng put this plan on the agenda. Now he is also increasingly finding that among the many superheroes he has, only Iron Man is a hero who exists specifically for war. No matter how powerful other heroes are, they are only one person, and their lethality is limited on the front battlefield with thousands of troops. Although the individual ability of Iron Man's armor is not particularly outstanding among the immortal teammates, the Iron Legion, the drone network, the Stark space station and Iron Man number 6 that Chu Cheng currently has, and all the most important war facilities are almost all from Iron Man technology. So there is a reason why many people on the Earth Star currently regard Iron Man as the savior. 2 days later, at this moment, now, a super satellite will replace the functions of almost all existing communication satellites. Dr. Hines said on behalf of the committee on the TV screen. Soon the existing positioning and navigation system will be completely replaced, and every user on the Earth Star will be able to access the satellite with the Stark Smart Bracelet to obtain positioning services that are far more accurate, smarter and have a wider coverage than now. A screen in the Special Service Number 9 Ruins Camp was also showing a live broadcast. A satellite. Liang Yi said, they always have new tricks. But it can't be just a satellite, right? Agent Duanlan said, I mean, in such a special period, and it's something made by Iron Man. Since the spy tried to break into the camp yesterday, several people from the 9 Ultimate Forces have been transferred here, responsible for the security of the camp, and also responsible for tracking the culprit. The situation is getting more and more tense. Duanlan said, maybe aliens and alien gods will come in the next second. This broken box in front of us may be the key, and now there is a group of unidentified psychopaths who may be planning to use this thing. Those bastards better not let us catch their tails. Luo Yajin snorted with a cigarette in his mouth. He was the first to discover the spy when he came in, but he was tricked by the other side. He was angry at this time, and he couldn't wait to find out the crazy people behind the scenes and teach them a lesson. Watch your language. The voice sounded from the side, loud and powerful. Everyone looked in the direction of the voice and saw Captain America, holding a shield, walking through the camp towards them. Everyone straightened their backs when they met his piercing gaze. Did you hear that? The captain said, don't swear. Liang Yi whispered in Luo Yajin's ear. Luo Yajin put out his cigarette and snorted, looking like a rookie whispering to his instructor while he was being lectured. Have we made any progress? Captain America asked. Captain America was originally left here in the camp by Chu Ching just in case. Most of the time, he was managed by AI. Although others couldn't tell the difference, he didn't talk much, and he wouldn't take the initiative to talk to anyone. Now Chu Ching came here in person to check the progress. One thing. Felix said, we tried to lock down the identity of the spy. His name is Roxxon, a former assassin, but he disappeared half a month ago and no one knows where he is. We found the place where he was last seen and have sent local agents to investigate his clues. Although Captain America was not a member of their organization at all, let alone their superior, for some reason, everyone couldn't help but stand at attention when this guy with a good lid appeared. When he asked a question, they unconsciously reported the answer, as if they were reporting the progress of their work to their superiors. It was as if this person had a natural temperament that made people want to obey involuntarily. Okay, continue the investigation and give me a progress report, Captain America said. Felix turned around and did as he was told. Captain America continued, don't worry, we already have someone working on this part of the problem. We will also tell you if there is any need. Hearing him say this, everyone unconsciously felt relieved. An Avenger told them that they were handling it, which made them feel like the matter was a sure thing and they didn't need to worry too much. At this time, Chu Cheng noticed through Captain America's perspective that Agent Duanlan next to him was hiding her expression and seemed to be peeking at him. He couldn't help but find it interesting, so he turned his head and asked with a straight face, what's wrong, Agent? No, nothing. Duanlan quickly retracted her gaze and shut up. But after a moment of hesitation, he finally couldn't help but peek over again and whispered, Captain, I heard that you should have a good relationship with Mr. Stark. Chapter 296 New Director? Chu Cheng was a little surprised to hear the other party ask this. Stark and Captain America are referred to as Shield and Iron in the American comics circle. You can say that they are the best partners. They are a pair of contrasting cute combinations that are retro and fashionable, representing the past and the future respectively. They even spawned a lot of not so serious fan works. But Chu Cheng thought that he seemed to have never sent the Shield and Iron combination to appear together, so how could the 9 Bureau agents know? However, she seemed to see the captain's doubts and explained, Stark mentioned you when he was speaking, saying that you are stubborn and old and teak. Is this true? Chu Cheng thought about it and quickly figured it out. It should be that Stark's character has its own voice, which may involve small Easter eggs involving Avengers teammates. Just like Marvel always likes to hide Easter eggs related to other movies through character lines or insignificant props in movies, Stark may have mentioned the captain casually one time, and the words and tone seemed more friendly, which attracted the attention of the 9 Bureau. But there is nothing to hide. The Avengers Alliance was originally the power that Chu Cheng planned to show to the world in the future. So he simply borrowed Captain America's microphone and said, yes, Stark is a comrade in arms and a rare friend, although we can't agree on many things. What's the matter? Oh, nothing. It's just that Duanlan seemed to have thought of something when she was about to say it, and she showed a hesitant look. But after thinking about it for a while, she still said to herself, it's just a rumor anyway, and many people have heard about it. It's not a secret. Well, it's something about the director. Director of the 9th Department? Captain America said. I heard that the candidate has not been decided yet. Chu Cheng had heard some of it before, and it seemed that they had been unable to make a decision on this candidate. But Chu Cheng didn't pay much attention to it. To him, it didn't matter who was the director. It was just a position, and had no impact on his plan. By the way, I heard about it too. Felix also thought of something when he heard Duanlan bring up this topic. After the incident with Director Lee, the selection of the new director has been quite sensitive. I heard from some channels that they have already decided on 3 candidates, but some of them went wrong in the background check, and some were involved in factional disputes. In short, they were not able to decide in the end. Everyone knew that Felix was not only a senior agent of the 9th Bureau, but also had a family background in the Emotional Bureau. His channels were naturally quite credible. It seems that the position of director is really a hot potato. Luo Yajin said. Yes, so someone recently proposed a new plan. Felix said, there are many voices of opposition, because this is indeed a very bold proposal. Some people say this is crazy, but from many aspects of analysis, it is indeed a very suitable option in all aspects. In connection with Duanlan's previous question, Chu Cheng vaguely guessed what he was going to say, and his mind moved, secretly a little stunned. He remained calm and still used Captain America to say, are you talking about Stark? The other people who had not heard of the rumor also showed surprised expressions. Tony Stark, a person from another world that they knew almost nothing about, director of the 9th Special Service Division. Most people's first reaction to hearing this was that they were simply crazy. Although it is true that the Earth Pole Star may face a huge threat, and it is reasonable to say that extraordinary measures are needed in extraordinary times, it is still incredible to ask an alien with unknown background to lead such a crucial department and hold such great power. Only Luo Yajin laughed when he heard this and said without thinking, finally, they can make a wise decision. The others ignored his words, but after thinking about it, they felt that this decision did make some sense. Now basically no one doubts the technology and strength of Iron Man and the Super Alliance behind them. They came to help from afar across dimensions completely voluntarily. Based on the strength they have shown so far, if they really want to sweep the Earth Pole Star by force, there will be no problem at all. So instead of being stingy and guarding against this and that, it is better to be generous and show enough trust. Anyway, the position is just an empty title. Even without this title, they will still have to follow Stark's instructions at the critical moment of the planet's life and death. Once the war with the aliens really breaks out, the position of the director of the 9th Department will be equivalent to the commander-in-chief. Giving it to Stark will make it easier for the other party to directly command and dispatch, and improve combat efficiency. Chu Cheng felt a little subtle when he heard it. In theory, Stark is essentially his vest. If he uses a vest to serve as the leader of the 9th Department, wouldn't he become his own boss? It feels weird, but it's just a rumor. After all, no one really mentioned Stark to be the director. Even if they really decided to do so, Chu Cheng might not accept it. Anyway, he can dispatch the 9th Department at will now. Unless giving Stark the title of director can bring some substantial convenience and benefits, he is really not happy. After all, his schedule is already full enough, and Stark basically works for him in the laboratory all day, so he doesn't have much time to deal with the internal affairs of other organizations. Let's talk about it later. I'll discuss this with Tony. Captain America said. That's right. This is just a rumor. Who knows? Duanlan said, and didn't mention it anymore. He changed the subject and said, now we have to find those guys who have plotted against the Advent Corps first. The last time Roxanne was confirmed to appear was in Vindelany. Felix said, maybe there will be clues there. Don't worry. Captain America said, there are our best members there. We just have to wait for news. Vindelany, late at night. The sharp sound of sirens cut through the darkness, and the alternating flashing red and blue lights illuminated the sky. Today is the day to close the net on the forces of McKinney, the last drug lord in Vindelany. According to Chu Cheng's original plan, this should have been done a few days ago, but he didn't expect that there was a problem with the Dragon Clan ruins near Jiangdu, and the handling of the Advent Core was delayed in the past 2 days, so he asked Friday to temporarily postpone the schedule of relatively less urgent events here, and today is the day of action. A large number of soldiers broke into the den, using stun grenades and tear gas to clear the way. The other side had already lost most of the battle before the two sides even started fighting. Thanks to the accurate intelligence provided by Green Arrow, a detailed plan was made before the action. Then Green Arrow took the lead by breaking into the den through the window of the upper floor, and the sheriff's department followed behind. They controlled the entire den without firing a single shot. However, when the entire den was taken down, they found that the leader they were looking for, Mackenzie, was not among them. It turned out that the cunning guy got wind of it from somewhere, left his subordinates to resist in the base, and disguised himself as a minion and drove away from the back door. It's a pity that he got away. Director House smiled, but this means their organization is basically finished. We finally pulled out the last nail in Vindelany, all thanks to you. Don't worry, Director. Green Arrow stood aside with a bow and arrow, watching the gangsters who were sobbing and snotting from the tear gas being escorted into the car one by one, and seemed to be confident. He chuckled. We have our own arrangements for him. Long lost 10,000 words. Chapter 297 The Rebels. McKinney had indeed fled before the operation began. In fact, to be fair, the days before the arrest operation began were the most tormenting for him. The criminals in the entire city, both openly and secretly, fell one after another under the hands of the two archers in just over a week. In the blink of an eye, he was the only target left. No matter how rough he was, he should have realized that a disaster was coming. He had no appetite for the past few days. He hid in the safe house and was worried all day long. He was so worried that he lost weight to 180 pounds. So McKinney ran away before the Public Security Bureau came. He changed his subordinates' clothes and even threw away his own car. He changed into someone's car in the organization and ran away. They avoided the main roads and took the dark paths, heading out of the city. There was a helicopter outside the city, waiting to pick him up as soon as McKinney arrived. But it was obviously not that easy. The arrow flew through the air and pierced the windshield in front of the car. The arrowhead exploded with a snap, and a ball of purple sticky stuff like mud appeared. The stuff was originally concentrated in the small high-tech arrowhead, and the moment it exploded and touched the air, it expanded at an alarming rate, and in a blink of an eye, it had spread to most of the windshield. The driver in the car screamed, and after losing his sight, he turned the steering wheel sharply and stepped on the brakes at the same time. But they were already nervous to run away in the middle of the night. They stepped on the accelerator all the time and wished that this broken car had 2 more wheels. They had to worry about whether someone was following them all the way. In addition, it was late at night and the road was dark. They couldn't see anything along the way. After a sudden brake, the car body drifted on the spot and crashed into a big tree on the side of the road. The hood of the car was directly dented, and a string of sparks jumped out of the engine. The broken tree trunk hit the roof of the car like a head-on, and the windshield shattered with a clang. Several people in the car were smashed to pieces, and some were even bleeding from their heads. But they recovered in just a few seconds, and fell out of the car one by one. McKinney took the lead, got out of the car without caring about his trusted brothers, and ran away. But he hadn't run a few steps when he saw a man standing in the shadows in front of him. He was wearing a black tactical vest, a quiver on his back, and holding a black folding bow. He was one of the 2 archers that the whole city was afraid of these days. Hawkeye, it's over. This was the thought that popped up in McKinney and everyone around him at the same time. They all knew clearly what these 2 archers were capable of. In a week, the entire city's entangled criminal families were uprooted by them. They were not sheriffs, and they didn't follow the rules. They were simply the nemesis of the plague god for those who were good at exploiting loopholes in the underground world. No, please. But the other party didn't even listen to his begging for mercy. Hawkeye pulled out the next arrow from the quiver without saying a word, and aimed the arrow at him. With a whoosh, the compound bow was pulled to its full length, and the arrow shot through the air. At that moment, McKenny almost felt that his breathing was cut off. Countless big guys fell under that bow, and those who were much stronger than him were defeated. Those with bad luck went straight to see the king of hell, and those with good luck spent the rest of their lives in prison. Why did he think he would be any different? But what no one expected was that a hand suddenly stretched out from the darkness and grabbed the arrow that Hawkeye shot into the air. It was a man. A tall and thin man, wearing a black combat uniform, with a slender figure. His face was pale, as if he was seriously ill, and he looked a little old, but his eyes were clear as water and bright. Archer. If I remember correctly. Hawkeye? The tall and thin man turned the arrow he caught in his hand half a circle. Robin Hood, you have become quite famous recently. I have long thought that I would come to Vindelany to learn from you. Have you heard of Werewolf Fritz? Werewolf? Are you that werewolf? The subordinates around McKenny exclaimed. After being reminded by him, several people also remembered this name. Law-abiding citizens may not have heard of it, but many of them who are in the underworld, especially those who entered the industry early, have heard of this name. Fritz Whitman, a veteran of the assassin world of the same batch as Black Sun, is one of the only remaining super assassins on the Earth Star. In the early years, it was rumored that he liked to commit crimes on the day of the full moon, so he was given the title of werewolf. But like Black Sun, he had long since retired behind the scenes and no longer personally took action. They actually encountered such a legend at this critical moment. In Vindelany, Werewolf Fritz stepped forward. Let me confirm whether you really have eagle eyes as they say. Bad idea. This will be the biggest mistake you have ever made in your life, buddy. As Hawkeye finished speaking, the arrow in his hand had already left the string. He put 3 arrows on at the same time, 3 arrows in one shot, 2 of which were aimed at the killer's 2 vital points, and the 3rd arrow was locked on McKenny behind him. The original purpose of this shot was to trap McKenny with binding arrows, while he was distracted to defend and prevent him from escaping. But unexpectedly, a sharp silver light flashed in the werewolf's hand, and 3 clangs intercepted and shot away the 3 arrows halfway. The arrow shot at McKenny was broken in half, and the arrowhead lost its aim and spun diagonally and fell to the ground on one side and exploded into a ball of gel with a snap. McKenny and several of his brothers were as hen. They all immediately thought that if the assassin hadn't intercepted the arrow, they would have been trapped in this strange thing and couldn't escape even in their dreams. Werewolf Fritz turned a short knife in his hand half a circle, walked towards Hawkeye, and said coldly without looking back, "What are you still doing here?" McKenny and his friends woke up, as if from a dream, and hurriedly turned around and ran away. After running a few steps, they saw that the cover of the water manhole had been opened, and someone half of his body was leaning out to wave at them. McKenny hesitated, thinking that the situation was critical and there was really no way to escape, so he simply waved his hand, and took a few brothers, to follow the man down. The man covered the cover of the sewer from behind, and there was no clue from the outside. "I don't know who you are, but don't think you can win my gratitude by doing this." McKenny followed the man and said stiffly, "I'm still the only remaining king in this city, and I still have the support of hundreds of people today. You'd better stop playing tricks and tell me what you do. Don't be nervous, Mr. McKenny. We know that your strength is still there, which is why you are still worthy of our invitation." The man walked in front and said with a smile, "Invitation? Who are you?" "Rebels," the man said. "People whose interests have been seized. People who have been forced to lose their jobs and have no choice. Street members who have been driven out of the streets and have nowhere to go. And professional killers whose entire industry has been devastated and are in a difficult situation. We have politicians, entrepreneurs, lower middle class people, as well as criminals and killers. Our organization spans the boundaries of the city and spreads all over the world. It is the embodiment of all those who are forced to unite and resist. Resist those cross-dressing lunatics." McKenny pondered for a moment and said, "If that's the case, then I'm sorry I can't join your club. You obviously don't recognize the abilities of those guys. Vindelany. Those 2 archers have already made the forces of our entire city exhausted, but that's not the real strong among them. For example, Iron Man. Oh, don't worry, dear McKenny." The guide stopped, and another person's voice came from the darkness, sounding more mature and older. the front suddenly opened up, and a huge space was opened up in the underground floor. The lights were bright all around. McKenny's eyes widened, and he was shocked to see the large number of soldiers and members filling the base. The scale was just like an army. He thought that this man was not exaggerating. Their so-called resistance force was serious. Then he saw the man who was talking. He had a pale face and a thin figure. It was the werewolf Fritz who had just rescued them from Hawkeye. McKenny was stunned. "Wait, weren't you just fighting with that guy called Hawkeye?" Fritz laughed disdainfully. "Do you think I will definitely be caught by him? You underestimate me too much." McKenny didn't say anything, but secretly he had a higher opinion of this legendary killer. He had witnessed the power of the two archers with his own eyes, and he had never seen anyone escape from them unscathed. But this killer not only did it, but also returned here even faster than McKenny and others. He had to believe that this level of killer was indeed not just a name. "You think the rebels have no chance of winning, and we can't be the opponents of those so-called superheroes?" Fritz saw through his thoughts at a glance and just smiled lightly. "It's understandable that you would think so. Generally speaking, it is true, if it weren't for the help from God. Don't worry, God sees everything and gives us the power to fight. Those superpowered lunatics thought they could take away our things and destroy our lives. And now, it's time to return the favor. If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelos. There you'll find the original version of this story and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 298 Saints. After the werewolf Fritz finished speaking, a group of people in the cave immediately responded loudly. Everyone was angry and looked extremely excited, as if they all had a deep hatred for those masked lunatics. Fritz's words were loud and powerful. Although McKenny felt that he had a lot of questions to ask, he didn't dare to interrupt when he saw so many people echoing loudly. He looked around carefully and was surprised to find that there were one or two familiar faces in this cave. He saw a small leader of a crime family in Vindelany. The family had been wiped out by the Green Arrow last week. I thought everyone had gone to jail, but I didn't expect that one of them was still here. There was also a thug he had seen before. It seemed that he was also a personal bodyguard of a big shot. He was a well-known figure in the Vindelany Road. A few days ago, the power of the big shot had collapsed, and everyone who should have gone to jail had gone to jail. I thought this thug should have finished with his master, but I didn't expect to see him here. There was another assassin, who was also a veteran who had been active in Vindelany for many years. McKenny had done business with him once or twice, and although he was not very familiar with him, he knew him. It seemed that there were really dissatisfied guys here. Amid the noise, another voice rang out. "You said there was something important, so it had better be true." McKenny was startled, and it took him a while to realize that the voice came from above. Many people followed the voice and looked up at the same time as him and immediately saw a figure hovering in the air at some point. It was a man wearing a loose robe, which fell to his ankles like a skirt. Half of his body was tightly wrapped in the robe, and a pair of white hands like a woman's appeared from the wide sleeves, with slender and delicate fingers. But in sharp contrast to the delicate skin and fingers was the thing on his wrist. A pair of bracelet-like things, black and made of unknown material. But the ring was irregular in appearance, with a rugged shape, extending strangely upward from the wrist to the forearm, looking like various strange stones stacked one after another, and the whole thing looked a bit like the face of an unknown creature, which was bizarre. Some strange and invisible energy was stimulated from the pair of bracelets, allowing the man to hang in the air, looking down on everyone like an angel. McKenny was shocked to see this scene, and immediately thought that this might be a superpower like some superheroes. Saint. Werewolf Fritz looked up at the man and said in a flat tone, "I heard that you only need to prove your ability and loyalty to God to be blessed to join the headquarters and even be selected as a member of the Saint." The man called the Saint was still hanging in the air and replied in an even colder tone, "The premise is that you can prove yourself." It turned out that the establishment of this organization was everywhere, and it was secretly developing in many cities on the Earth Pole Star. They hid underground, avoiding the eyes and ears of the authorities and superheroes, and established a huge dark network structure. The branches in various places are independent of each other. Members in each region only know the existence of the unified organization, but have no idea where other branches are and who they are. However, they will get help from the headquarters to avoid those superheroes and continue to secretly win over those who have the idea of resistance to develop their power. In this way, even if a branch is discovered and destroyed, they cannot reveal the inside story of the organization. At the headquarters of the organization, those who are lucky enough to be selected and blessed will step into the extraordinary and become permanent members of the headquarters. The more outstanding ones will be selected as saints, who have the power to communicate directly with their gods and are also the strongest in the organization. The situation is tense now. I don't think I need to explain it in particular. The saint floated in the air and said stiffly, "Total war is coming, and God is actively preparing for Advent. The saints have a whole world to take care of, and countless things to do. So you'd better have a good reason to ask me to make this trip, otherwise, of course, there is absolutely no more important reason than this." Werewolf Fritz said confidently, "In fact, this is the only thing the organization cares about, and the only thing it needs." He clapped his hands, as if he was giving an order through his movements. Soon, the crowd behind separated to both sides like a tide, and a man came out carrying a box. He placed the metal box horizontally on a table and stepped aside. Werewolf Fritz walked forward and reached out to press under the handle of the box. There was a click of a hidden button being unlocked, and a dial was revealed underneath. It turned out to be a combination lock. He entered the password, and the lock snapped open with a click after verification. He turned the metal box over, and turned it over to show the saint. The saint was in midair, and he widened his eyes at a glance, and his breathing was almost choked. The small box-like object with a strange structure lay quietly in the box. Wasn't it the Advent Core that everyone in their organization had been dreaming about? The saint, who had been looking high and mighty throughout the whole process, finally descended from the air and landed beside the table. He carefully took the small box from the box, let it lie in the palm of his hand, and gently closed his eyes, as if he was feeling something. The others stepped aside, patiently waiting for him without disturbing him. This unique infection wavelength, the energy characteristic is. The saint opened his eyes and showed an expression of uncontrollable joy. Advent Core. He then put away his contemptuous attitude and turned his head to look at the killer beside him seriously. "How did you get it?" "Strength, plus a little strategy." The Wolfman Fritz's voice was still cold. "I think this should be enough to prove your ability." "Yes, it is enough. This is what the organization needs most at the moment. I will explain your achievements to God, all of you." The saint said, "I have a better idea. Why don't I go with you?" Fritz said. The saint's smile faded, and he looked at him stiffly for a moment. "No one other than the saint has ever been able to talk to the Lord God," he said. "No one else has ever brought back the Descendant Core. The former legendary killer was tit for tat, not giving in. How else would I know that you wouldn't take the credit for yourself?" A murderous look flashed in the saint's eyes. "Are you questioning a saint?" "I dare not. I'm just trying to win a chance to prove myself." Fritz said, "I think I have just proved my strength, and what I want now is a chance to prove my loyalty." Many people around him echoed loudly. The Vindelani branch entered a period of rapid development after the Archer duo began their activities. Many members present joined the gang because they were forced to have no other choice. But Fritz was not one of them. He was one of the first members to join, and he was also one of the most famous killers. He had a strong leadership temperament and was already quite popular in the Vindelani branch. The saint looked around and thought that this was indeed a special case. The Advent Core is extremely important. Even the saints around God have never made such a great contribution. In addition, it seems that this leader is indeed very prestigious in this branch. If he can be valued by the Great Lord, it will probably be beneficial to the development of the lower level members. Well, you have indeed earned this opportunity for yourself, Fritz. The saint made up his mind and said in a deep voice, then feel honored and terrified. You are about to see the greatest existence in the world. If you are really worthy and are granted the qualifications of a saint by God, then we naturally have nothing to say. But if the Lord is not happy to see you, let's just say that you will regret your stubbornness. Don't worry, then you don't have to worry about it. Fritz said indifferently, just lead the way, we will see. Chapter 299. Who are you? After checking the Advent core, the saint locked it back into the small metal box. He knew that this thing was extremely important, and was indeed the most important thing to God in the organization at the moment. So the moment he saw it, he didn't want to delay for a second, and couldn't wait to fly back to the headquarters with it. Take it. The saint returned the box to Fritz, who picked it up in his hand. At the same time, he looked at the saint's actions with some curiosity, wondering how he planned to return to the headquarters. The saint lifted him up with one hand, and clenched his fist with the other hand, with the tip of his fist pointing downward. His strange bracelet, which looked like a pile of rocks, suddenly stimulated some kind of energy, and the invisible impact slammed into the ground, forming a huge reverse thrust. The two of them immediately took off into the air, flew out along the pipeline with a whoosh, turned 90 degrees, rushed out of the pipeline system, and flew straight into the sky in an instant. The saint's expression was cold, holding Fritz tightly with one hand, and the other hand was clenched backwards throughout the whole process. The bracelet's energy continued to stimulate, allowing them to maintain high-speed movement in mid-air. The strong wind hit them like an invisible torrent, suffocating Fritz for a moment. He turned his head to avoid the wind pressure, and tried to find a topic. So, this is how you go between branches? He asked, flying directly? Aren't you afraid of being seen? The saint sneered, relying on human radar and observation stations? Do they want to find me? This power blessed by God? Well, I think so. Fritz tried to ask some more questions about the organization's headquarters and their mysterious lord. The members of the organization knew the existence of the headquarters and the god, but they knew nothing about the details. But no matter how Fritz asked, the saint always said no comment, which made him swallow a northwest wind. Fritz was bored, thinking that they would arrive directly in a while, so he simply shut up and didn't ask. But this flight took a little longer than expected. They flew for about 2 or 3 hours, and crossed 2 cities during the flight. Fritz was surprised to find that they were heading in a direction with few people. After a while, they flew out of the city and into the sea. The final destination was actually an island. An undeveloped uninhabited island that would not even be marked on maps of many regions. The headquarters of the organization was hidden in such a place, and there was little commuting with the land, and there was almost no communication with the branches in various places. It was indeed not easy to find. Even Chu Cheng would not be able to escape his eyes when he completed the plan of drone full coverage of the Earth pole star. But now the plan was still in its infancy and only covered a few cities. It was not easy to find a way to such a deserted island that was neither up nor down. The saint landed with a killer and landed in a dense forest. The saint led the way in front. Fritz was dragged so far that half of his body was numb. But he was one of the top killers in the Earth pole star after all, and his physique was close to the peak of a human body. So he handed the box from his right hand to his left hand without saying a word, and followed behind him sullenly. The saint glanced at him. Although he didn't say anything, he felt that this man could move freely as soon as he landed. As a top killer, his physical fitness was indeed not to be underestimated. At least before he received the gift from God, he was definitely far better than him. If we talk about ability, this man is indeed a good candidate for the saint. Of course, he was just thinking about it. The selection of saints has always been decided by their great God. Others cannot speculate at will, and are not qualified to question. Even if the great God takes a fancy to the disabled man with broken hands and feet on the roadside and wants to select him into the ranks of saints, it is all up to him. After walking a few steps, Fritz found that there was a secret door hidden in the forest. The saint walked to a bare mountain wall, opened the 5 fingers of his right hand, and pressed on the mountain wall. A buzzing sound soon came from behind the mountain wall, and a crack appeared out of thin air on the smooth stone wall. It opened to both sides with a rustling sound, revealing a door. Following the saint into the room, there were people standing guard on both sides along the way. Those people were a little surprised to see Fritz swaggering in with a box. The organization has strict rules, and the headquarters is a forbidden place for lower level members. According to the regulations, anyone who wants to visit must be notified and recorded in advance. But they recognized that the one walking in front was a saint, one of the actual highest power holders in the entire organization, so no one dared to ask more questions. The members along the way all gave them a strange salute. They put their hands up and down, the right hand was above the head, the palm facing left, and the left hand was about at the level of the navel, the palm was horizontal and the palm was facing down. Throwing it into the street is definitely a reward for human meaningless behavior. Fritz didn't understand, but he followed behind and didn't say anything. Finally, in the deepest part of the base, they came to a structure similar to an altar. The empty hall was almost empty, and it was pitch dark everywhere. Only the strange altar was located in the center. Not long after they walked in, the light appeared. Fritz didn't find any lighting equipment here. He didn't understand where the light came from, but in an instant, the dark hall was as bright as day. Except for the other side of the altar high up, as if it was intentionally hidden in the shadows. Only that corner of the whole hall was still dark. There seemed to be a figure in that place, and a pair of green lights like eyes were lit up. "You have something very important." The voice came from the darkness. As the saint said, "No one other than the saint has ever come here." "Yes, great lord. But I believe what he brought is very important," the saint said respectfully, and had already signaled Fritz to open the box. Fritz unlocked the combination lock, and the box clicked open, revealing the advent core lying inside. I don't know if it was an illusion, but at that moment the vision in the darkness seemed to have changed slightly. Advent core. Finally, the man clearly did not move in the shadows, but the advent core in the box was strangely suspended in the air, as if an invisible hand had pulled it over in the air. Fritz watched calmly as the advent core flew into the shadows and fell into the hands of the man. Finally, this is the time when the mission is completed. For this planet, it is both the beginning and the end of the journey, the voice said in a high-pitched voice, and at the same time, the small box in his hand floated into the air. It seemed that some force was acting on the core in the air, causing it to emit a slight buzzing sound. It was a bit like the humming of an engine when it started, and it was getting louder and louder under the influence of the invisible force. It is finally here, the time of God's descent. Great and almighty existence, your pioneer, the humble messenger of God, will complete the most important mission at this moment and guide you to descend here. The voice was high-pitched and excited, and the buzzing sound reached its peak. The saint bowed his head respectfully, as if waiting for some exciting vision to happen. Plop. The advent core fell to the ground and rolled twice. Nothing happened. The majestic shadow in the darkness remained in an exaggerated posture and stopped in place. The saint bowed his head and dared not speak. The air froze for a moment, revealing a rather awkward atmosphere. After 2 seconds of silence, the shadow suddenly shouted, "No, this is not an exquisite forgery of the advent core." The green eyes immediately shot to Fritz, who was standing off the field. "You are not my man. Who are you?" The saint was surprised to hear this, and without thinking, he stretched out his arms and grabbed at his side. But Fritz reacted faster, shrinking his body to avoid his grab, and then did a backflip to distance himself. Ripples appeared on his face, and his face shook like a distorted image. In the blink of an eye, he had changed from an old killer to a woman with white skin and charming appearance, with long fiery red hair falling like a waterfall, smiling at the saint. Natasha Romanoff, also known as the Black Widow. Chapter 300. Who said I was alone? One day ago, at the 9th Special Service Camp. That's enough. Professor Miyazaki patted the small box-shaped object on the table. It was the advent core that the saints had been dreaming about. However, there were a lot of extra parts scattered around. The style seemed to be similar to the advent core. It looked like a building block. Captain America picked up the small box. "It looks no different from the original." Captain America looked at it for a moment and said, "Are you sure it won't be seen?" "I didn't say that." Professor Miyazaki shrugged. "Time is too tight. If I can have more time to study this thing slowly, maybe I can find more. But now, I have tried my best. I put everything I can into it. It can simulate the same infection source signal, magnetic characteristics, and other weak wavelengths as the advent core. In short, if you give this thing to me for testing, I might believe it before I take it apart. But can it fool aliens? Who knows?" Captain America took the fake small box in his hand and walked closer to the real Advent core isolated in a transparent special material to compare. Chu Cheng zoomed in the lens through the screen and compared the original and the replica along the detailed lines for a while. It seemed that there was really no difference. It must be said that Miyazaki's research on infection is indeed unmatched on the entire Earth pole star. He actually forged such a realistic replica in such a short time. The appearance is exactly the same as the original one, and the radiation data detected in 9 places are restored as much as possible, but the inside is actually just a pile of circuit boards and signal transmitters. It's okay, Professor Miyazaki, you have done a good job. Captain America nodded. Just leave it to us next. At this moment, this change was unexpected by everyone, especially the saint who introduced Fritz to the Lord of God, who almost dropped his jaw. It was a disguise of some kind of technology, a layer of film supported by a frame of high-tech materials, tightly attached to the face of Black Widow Natasha, so that her face can be edited into any appearance, and disguised as anyone. This is the method used by Black Widow in the movie Captain America 2. That's right, the little movement of this so-called organization has long attracted the attention of Chu Cheng. Although his monitoring network in other places has not been settled for the time being, Windelany is already under his control. Therefore, with the help of the invisible eyeliner that no one knows about, he quickly noticed the existence of such a secret force. But after a little investigation, he found that this force was just a branch, and the branch organization was full of low-ranking characters, which could not cause any big waves. And the organization as a whole was extremely cunning and had very little contact with the branch, and there were few clues that could be traced back. So he decided to keep quiet and not touch the branch for the time being, but to infiltrate the interior to find an opportunity to contact the headquarters. When it comes to infiltrating the interior, the super spy Black Widow is naturally the best choice. Although Batman is also suitable, he usually operates Batman more smoothly, and Batman has a detective mode and a bunch of convenient equipment, so he often needs to arrange other tasks for the master. But Black Widow has been useless since she was shipped, and he was originally looking for a place to arrange her to be stationed, and this time it happened to be suitable. So Black Widow was assigned the identity of the legendary killer werewolf Fritz by him. As for the real Fritz, he had naturally been captured long ago. The appearance of the Advent Core undoubtedly gave him an excellent opportunity, which was a huge bait that these people could not refuse. Of course, the real Advent Core cannot be handed over to them, although it is unknown whether Professor Miyazaki's forgery will be discovered. It is indeed worth a try. With this opportunity, Chu Cheng not only wants to find out the address of their headquarters and the true identity of the so-called God Lord, but also intends to find out what this broken box is used for. Now he probably has guessed it. Is it used to call your alien buddies over? Black Widow said, while jumping back to avoid the Saint's grab. Why? They are all directionally challenged. It's easy to get lost without this thing. The man in the shadow seemed to have no reaction, as if he didn't hear it. His pair of dark green eyes still looked at this side coldly, and he didn't seem to have any intention of moving. Don't worry, Lord God, I can quickly take down this kind of insect ant, the Saint said as he punched out in the air. The moment he handed out his fist, the rugged bracelet on his wrist suddenly activated, and the transparent energy impacts hit him. But Black Widow rolled sideways to avoid it. Bracelet, right? That thing that gives you the power. Black Widow said as she retreated. So that bracelet is so powerful. Then I think you shouldn't call yourself a saint. It sounds better to call you a bracelet rack. The Saint was furious, cursing and punching again. Black Widow dodged again, and the bracelet energy flew out through the air, blasting a hole in the back wall with a bang. This was originally a forbidden area in the base that was forbidden to enter. Even if someone heard something going on inside, no one dared to inquire about it. But this energy impact went straight through the forbidden area. No matter how stupid the people outside were, they knew something was wrong, and a team of members rushed in immediately. Chu Cheng flicked the mouse and glanced to the side from Black Widow's perspective. He saw that the people who entered the door immediately took up a fighting stance. Some of them transformed into blades in their hands, and some transformed into spears and swords. Everyone had a weapon in their hands out of thin air, releasing similar strange fluctuations. He quickly realized that this should be the means by which the so-called master gave them abilities. Those weapons greatly enhanced the human body's capabilities, and at the same time, they could release some very strange forms of energy as a means of attack. "Take him down," the Saint shouted, and those who entered the door immediately rushed forward with their weapons. Black Widow did not retreat but advanced, and rushed into the crowd head-on. Several people were inexperienced in combat, and were quickly disrupted by her. They turned their heads, and wanted to swing their swords and slashed, but found that they were blocked by their teammates' bodies. Black Widow easily dodged 2 knives, raised her hand and a smoke bomb exploded with a snap, swallowing up the figures of these people in an instant. "I can't see it." She rushed out of the smoke. Wait, where did she go? The members were immediately in chaos, and Black Widow's figure had long disappeared when the smoke dissipated. Invisibility fog, a common technology mastered by S.H.I.E.L.D. and Stark. However, most S.H.I.E.L.D. agents and Avengers do not often use this trick. Only Black Widow, who often needs to perform spy infiltration and assassination work, prefers it, so the game also sets this trick as Black Widow's common equipment in the hero skills. Silence. The Saint roared, and everyone suddenly quieted down, holding their weapons in front of them to guard against attacks. The Saint suddenly punched, turned around and fired a powerful energy at a teammate. The man didn't expect the Saint to attack him, and hurriedly tried to hide, but suddenly felt his shoulder tightened, as if he was caught by someone, and was caught off guard, and pulled into the path of the energy. He was blown upside down and flew out. A black shadow flashed, and the invisible Black Widow grabbed a soldier with her bare hands, to block a bullet for herself, but the aftermath still blew her out. Her fiery red hair fluttered, and fell messily when she landed. Hidden body, trifling trick, but I can still hear you. The Saint sneered. "You dare to come here alone, then stay and don't go out." As he said that, he punched again in the air, and the energy wave flew straight towards the Black Widow. But at this moment, a dark blue figure descended from nowhere. Captain America suddenly flashed out, holding up his shield, and blocking in front of Black Widow. The timing was perfect, a perfect shield counter. The impact of the bracelet was immediately bounced back, and hit the Saint himself head on, blowing his body into the air, and smashing several soldiers backwards. Black Widow's mouth curled. "Who said I came here alone?" End of this chapter. Thank you very much for reaching the end. Don't forget to like. Looking for more exclusive content and immediate access? Subscribe to our Patreon. Remember, every like, subscription, or donation encourages us to continue. Thanks to everyone. See you in the next video.